Yes, magandang araw po sa lahat. Thank you for attending this morning's Linangan lecture on contemporary world. I am Assistant Professor Enrico Gloria from the Department of Political Science in UP Diliman, and I will be your moderator for today. So thank you very much again for attending. For those in the Zoom call, welcome, and we're glad to have you here. We're also live in YouTube and also via Facebook Live. So please do share this morning's lecture to your other colleagues as well. We can already see many participants coming in. So I have here a list. No, so we have participants coming from Davao del Sur State College, Batangas Eastern Colleges, San Juan, Batangas. We also have participants from TUP Manila and also in St. Rose College in Tarlac, JHCSC in Mindanao. So, and more from other universities like Our Lady of Fatima University in Laguna. So this is definitely going to be a diverse set of participants for today's lecture, and I'm also looking forward to what our speakers have lined up for us today. So um, before we begin, we just have a couple of reminders for everyone. Yes, so as you can see here, you can send in your questions, no, using the Zoom chat box, no, but you can also type your questions in the Facebook comments in our Facebook Live and the YouTube comments section, no. So do utilize those avenues in sending in your questions, no. But for those in the Zoom call, no, we would appreciate it if you can key in your answers, your questions here in the Zoom chat box, no. And also, please don't forget to answer the evaluation form. No? So this will be very crucial so that you can receive your certificate of participation. So the evaluation form link will be posted in the Zoom chat shortly, or if it has been posted already, so it's in the Zoom chat. No? And also you can see it in the YouTube comments and YouTube Facebook live comment section. No? Do keep in mind that the evaluation form will be closed on June 13. That's on a Monday at around at 11:59 p.m. No? So there's a deadline for our evaluation form. No? And then we will be sending the certificates by batches until June 14, 2022, so the next day. So if you cannot locate your certificate even after that date, June 14, please check your spam folder before sending us a follow-up email. So these are just some of the reminders, no, that we need to take note of. Again, we need to have the evaluation forms answered for you to receive the certificates. So again, thank you very much for attending this morning's Linangan lecture on contemporary world. No? Um, I specifically have been with UP Diliman for 3 years already, and that is also 3 years or 6 to 7 semesters of handling and teaching a GE course as well. More specifically, what we call Social Science 2 or SOCSI 2, no? Which is Social, Economic, and Political Thought. No? So definitely, this topic for today would be something that I would be really interested in learning as well. And this morning, we have very interesting lectures and topics lined up for everyone. And these will be delivered by senior and highly experienced faculty members with respect to handling GE courses in the university, right? If I may say so myself, our speakers have also been my mentors or faculty members I have looked up to, or I have personally asked questions in terms of how to handle GE courses, no, related to the contemporary world, if you will. So without further ado, I will be introducing our speaker or next speaker, no, who will be delivering the opening remarks for this morning. No? So we have Professor Nancy Kimwell Gabriel, who will be delivering the opening remarks. Ma'am Nancy, you have the virtual floor po.
Yes, maraming salamat, Miko. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Magandang umaga sa mga kalahok na naririto sa Zoom meeting ngayong umaga at sa mga tagapakinig sa YouTube at sa Facebook Live at syempre sa ating mga tagapagsalita ngayong umaga. Welcome po sa ikawalong serye ng Linangan, Contemporary World Edition. Tunay na kailangan ng mga guro ng contemporary world subject ang panapanahong talakayan para makapagpatalas sa pagbasa at pagsusuri ng mga kaganapan sa ating daigdig. Sapagkat kung titingnan ang mga pangyayari sa buong mundo, nakakapangamba at nakakagalit din. Paano natin uunawain ang mga kaganapang ito? At ano ang kaugnayan ng mga pangmundong pangyayari sa ating bansa? Halimbawa, 100 araw na ang giyera ng Russia at Ukraine mula nang pumutok ito noong February 24 at nagtulak sa mahigit 6 na milyong mamamayan ng Ukraine na lumabas ng bansa at mahigit 7 milyon ang internally displaced. 38,000 ang residential buildings na nasira, 220,000 ang homeless, 180 eskwelahan ang binomba, 500 factories, 290 health facilities, 1,900 hospitals. Sa isang syudad lamang sa Mariupol halimbawa, umabot na ang death toll sa 21,000. Malinaw na ang karaniwang mamamayan ang napinsala sa gyerang ito. Hindi natin masasabing walang kaugnayan ng giyera sa ating buhay dahil na rin may mga OFW at estudyante tayo na naroon. Araw-araw din ang pagtaas ng presyo ng langis at halos umaabot na ang presyo ng gasolina mula 75 pesos hanggang 90 pesos plus per litro, depende kung nasaan kayo. Gayun din ang pagmahal ng presyo ng pandesal at iba pang tinapay na gumagamit ng trigo at arina. Lagi rin tayong nililigalig ng posibilidad ng gyerang nuklear at paglawak ng digmaan sa mga bansang kaanib ng NATO. Bakit nagdedemand ang Russia na huwag sumali ang Ukraine sa NATO? Sa kabilang banda, bakit naman nagkukumahog ngayon ang Finland at Norway sa pagsali sa NATO sa kabila ng mahigpit na pagtutol ng Turkey? Ano ba ang historical na papel ng NATO sa buong daigdig? Bakit may away at kampihan? Tila war freak ang mga bansa ngayon. Ang Japan ay vocal din sa pagsasabing nais nitong mag-develop ng mga fighter jets kasama ang United Kingdom. At kung giyera ang pag-uusapan, higit na malapit sa atin ang issue ng West Philippine Sea at issue ng Taiwan. Nag-impose ng 3-month fishing ban ang gobyernong Chino sa ating teritoryo, samantalang tuloy ang operasyon nila. Bakit nagpa-practice ang China ng invasion ng Taiwan? Binalasa din nito ang kanyang military top brass at nais nitong makapag-develop ng mga smart drone na direktang tatarget sa mga taong pinagpaplanuhan nilang atakihin. Samantala, sinasanay naman ng Taiwan ang kanilang karaniwang mamamayan sa paggamit ng baril bilang paghahanda sa pananakop ng China. Kinakalat ng US na gustong sakupin ng China ang Taiwan by 2027. At bakit handang-handa ang US sa pagpapadala ng tulong at pakikialam sa Taiwan? Ano ang nangyari sa One China policy? Bakit sasakupin kung bahagi ng China ang Taiwan sa ilalim ng One China policy? Ang patakaran bang ito ang dahilan kung bakit kailangan ding sawatain ang democracy movement sa Hong Kong at paghuhulihin ang mga student leaders at demonstrators doon? Marami pang litaw na pangyayari ngayon. Ang mga pambihira at ngayon lang na nararanasan na malalaking baha, tsunami at mga sunog sa kagubatan, ang gutom at food riots sa ibang bahagi ng mundo, ang papataas na bilang ng mass shooting sa United States, ang panunumbalik ng mga otoritaryang rehimen na itinuturing na rightist at fascist. Ano ang ipinahihiwatig nito sa atin? Paano bibigyang kahulugan ang mga ganitong phenomenon? At huwag nating kalilimutan, lahat ng ito ay nangyayari habang sinasalanta rin tayo ng COVID-19 pandemic sa mahigit 2 taon na. Napakalakas ng impact ng mga nangyayari at galaw ng US at China. Ang US, ang tradisyonal na mananakop, ay hinahamon ngayon ng kapangyarihang China bilang bagong mangangaltas ng teritoryo sa West Philippine Sea at higit na malakas na mangangalakal at tagapagpautang ng iba't ibang nasyon kahit mismo ng US. Isang yugto ba ito sa tinatawag na globalisasyon? Sa kontemporanyong panahon, saksi din tayo sa daluyong ng mga rally at demonstration, mga kilusang bayan sa iba't ibang bansa tulad ng Hong Kong, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Lebanon, pati nga sa Pilipinas na nagpoprotesta laban sa issue ng gutom at kahirapan, pagkabaon sa mga utang panlabas, korupsyon at katiwalian, paglabag sa makataong karapatan at nagsusulong ng ibayong demokratisasyon at pati nga pagpapatalsik pa nga ng kani-kanilang mga pinuno. Napapanahon kung gayon na maisagawa ng General Education Center ang ganitong talakayan para makatulong sa mga GE faculty sa iba't ibang panig ng Pilipinas kung paano susuriin at gagawing mas napapanahon at makabuluhan ang pagtuturo ng asignaturang Contemporary World. Hangad ng Universidad ng Pilipinas na makatulong tayo sa pagtataas ng kaalaman at paghahanda ng ating mga estudyante sa tunay na sitwasyong pandaigdig na binibigyang daan natin sa pagtuturo ng general education. Marami pong salamat at masayang talakayan sa araw na ito.
Thank you very much po, Ma'am Nancy, for that very insightful opening remarks. No, so Ma'am Nancy just mentioned a series of questions, no, na I think importante din when we talk about contemporary world. No, so it's really all about raising the discourse, if you will, no, dun sa pagturo natin nung contemporary world. For instance, no, like what Ma'am Nancy has mentioned, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, no, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. These are international events which undeniably has very strong impact on the way we make sense of the social world, no. And this is also when it comes to our politics in the Philippines, meron ding mga implications yan, no, which all the more important that we discuss, no, how do we raise the discourse when we teach, no, contemporary world to our students. Thank you very much again, Ma'am Nancy, for that very insightful opening remarks, no. And we have still many audience and new members coming into our Zoom call. Let me just acknowledge some of them from Urdaneta City University in Urdaneta, Pangasinan. We have participants from Teresa College in Caraga, and we also have participants from FEU Cavite, Batangas Eastern Colleges in San Juan, Batangas. We also have audiences coming in from Northern Bukidnon State College. No? Forgive me if I failed to mention some of the SUCs, no, as they are coming in very quickly, no, but I'm taking note of them and I'll try to mention everyone, no, as we proceed with today's lecture. No. So, without further ado, allow me to move on to the first lecture for this morning. So we have very interesting lectures lined up for today. So our first speaker for the first lecture is Professor Ramon Guillermo. So Professor Ramon Guillermo is currently the director of the Center for International Studies at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. His current research projects are on the transmission, dissemination, reception, and translation of radical texts and ideas in Southeast Asia, using techniques and approaches from translation studies and digital humanities. Professor Guillermo is also the author of several books, which include Translation and Revolution, a study of Jose Rizal's Guillermo, no, which is published by the Ateneo de Manila University Press in 2009. Pook at Paninindigan, Kritika ng Pantayong Pananaw, no, which is published by the UP Press in 2009. And he also published several other works as well, no, related to that topic. So to everyone, let us welcome our first speaker for this morning, Professor Ramon Guillermo. Sir Bowman, you have the virtual floor po.
Magandang umaga at maraming salamat sa pag-imbita dito sa napaka-interesante at napaka-exciting na teacher talk ngayong umaga. At nakakatuwa na napakaraming mga attendees, Miko, mula sa iba't ibang mga dako ng Pilipinas, iba't ibang mga paralan. Magandang umaga kay Ma'am Nak, kay Ma'am Ruth, at sana po ay maging may kapupulutan po yung ating mga at least yung talakayan ko ngayong umaga. At ako ay magbibigay ng partikular na diin sa usapin, yung isang napakatampok na usapin ng tinatawag nating Global South. Isang umusbong na ideya o tema na may kinalaman sa globalisasyon at may kinalaman sa mga nabanggit na paksa ni Professor Gabriel. So mag-share screen po ako. Ayan. Ito. Magandang umaga sa lahat ng ating mga guro. Sana ay magagamit natin yung ating mga mapupulot dito sa ating mga pagtuturo. Ito po yung pinaka-practical na nais nating mangyari ngayong araw. Ayan, so ito na, magsimula na lang kaagad-agad. Meron akong isang madalas gamitin na parang tool sa Google. Ito yung tinatawag na Google Books Ngram Viewer. Kasi nabibigyan tayo nito ng perspektiba tungkol sa kasaysayan ng mga salita, kasaysayan ng mga konsepto. Dahil minsan, halimbawa, pag-usapan natin globalisasyon, pag-usapan natin ang third world, pag-usapan natin iba't ibang mga konsepto na nasyonalismo, halimbawa. Pero ang isang mahalagang aspekto ng pag-unawa sa mga ideya na yan ay yung kanilang kasaysayan. Saan ba lumitaw, saan ba umusbong, kailan ginamit, kailan ba namayagpag, kailan naglaho ang maaaring mga ginagamit natin mga konsepto. Kahit sa halimbawa sa pagsusuri ng ating mga lipunan, pag-aaral ng daigdig. Kaya ito, useful ito. Kaya sa mga guro, kaya kung gusto nyo mag-experiment, ay punta lang kayo sa Google Books Ngram Viewer. At dito ay marami kayong magagawa. Halimbawa, dito sa screen na ito, makita natin, hinanap natin yung Global South, Global North, at saka Third World. Alam niyo naman, ang search terms ang ginagamit ng Google. At hinanap niya yung paglitaw ng mga salita na ito mula rather arbitrary, 1930, pre-war, pre-Second World War, at saka hanggang sa kasalukuyang panahon. So makita nyo rito ay meron talagang tiyak na kasaysayan yung ating mga salita, yung ating mga konsepto ng pag-unawa, paggagap natin sa daigdig, ay meron ding kasaysayan. Ibig sabihin, kung tingnan natin ito, yung isang tiyak, mas kilala nyo pa kaysa tinatawag na Global South, na medyo i-discuss ko ng mas malaliman, mas kilala nyo pa yung tinatawag na Third World. Diba? Ang isang katangian ng third world na salita o konsepto, bagamat ito ay napaka-komplikado ng kasaysayan, pakahulugan, at ibig sabihin, at kahit mga debate sa paligid ng third world. May mga nagsasabi nga na hindi naman talaga umiiral ang third world. Yan ay kathang isip lamang ng mga, halimbawa, ng mga gumagawa ng mga teorya sa mga universidad. Pero hindi talaga yan umiiral sa daigdig. Pero gayon pa man, ang isang makikita natin dito, ay yung talagang popularidad ng ideya ng third world. Kaya ito yung isang bagay ng kahit sa inyo, mapapansin nyo yan, di ba? Sabihin natin, napaka-third world naman ng ating kalagayan ngayon. Napaka-third world naman ng ating transport system, sasabihin natin. Ibig sabihin, makakaunawa ang mga tao kung sinasabi natin ang ganyan. Tumagos na yung isang salita o isang konsepto na galing sa sinasabi natin galing sa mga universidad, galing sa mga social scientists, lumaganap yan doon sa lipunan. At nagkaroon ng mga pag-unawa at pakahulugan yung mga tao, kahit ordinaryong mamamayan. Hindi kinakailangang may masters, may PhD, nakakaunawa yung mga yan ng third world. At pansinin ninyo, talagang lumakas ang paggamit ng third world pagkatapos ng ikalawang digmang pandaigdig. Ang nag-imbento ng konseptong ito, si Alfred Sauvy, noong 1952, ay ipinattern niya ito doon sa tinatawag na tiers-monde, no? O yung ikatlong daigdig na nakapattern doon sa tiers état, yung third estate ng French Revolution. At yung tinutukoy ni Sauvy rito na first world, yung first world, ay alam nyo rin yan, di ba? Ibig sabihin, ganun talaga kalaganap yung pagtagos dito sa ating kamalayan. First world, ito yung mga mayayaman ng mga bansa. Napaka first world naman dito, di ba? Kasi punta tayo ng isang mall, kahit dito sa Pilipinas, sabihin natin, napaka first world dito, sasabihin natin, di ba? Ngayon, yung second world ay medyo problematiko sa atin dahil ang second world, yun yung tumutukoy sa dating Soviet Union, sa mga dating mga socialist countries na ngayon ay nawala na. Kaya ngayon ay, kumbaga, kung may ginagamit tayo, actually hindi natin masyadong ginagamit ang second world. Ang ginagamit natin ay first world at saka third world. So, first world, social, third world, parang talagang hirap, di ba? Yan yung ating mga pag-uunawa dito. At makita natin na mula doon sa pag-introduce ni Sauvy dito noong 1952, ay talagang namayagpag, lumaganap, dumami ang paggamit. By the way, yung pinapakita ng ating Ngram viewer sa Google ay yung nahanap ng Google sa lahat ng mga libro na nailathala sa mga taon na ito. Ibig sabihin, alam natin na yung Google ay nag-i-scan ng maraming mga libro, sa maraming mga aklatan. Kaya sabi niya, okay, so meron tayong maraming mga libro, tingnan natin ngayon kung ano yung paano yung kasaysayan ng mga konsepto at mga salita sa mga libro na ito. Kaya makita natin na, well, this is quite interesting, 1980s ang talagang pinakarurok na inabot ng ideya ng third world. At pansinin natin, ito yung mga kapanahunan halimbawa ng masigla na pagkilos ng mga mamamayang Pilipino noong pagkaraan ng pagpaslang kay Ninoy Aquino ay naganap nga yung pagpapabagsak sa diktadura ni Ferdinand Marcos noong 1986. Parang halos ito, halos yun yung rurok, makita nyo, yung mga kaganapan sa Pilipinas at sa iba pang dako ng Pilipinas na ng daigdig na medyo nagpapakita ng pagbugso ng mga pagkilos ng mga mamamayan sa iba't ibang dako ng ating daigdig, third world. Gayunpaman, dito ang papansin na may parang krisis na pinagdaanan yung third world. Pagkaraan nito ay tuloy-tuloy nang bumababa ang paggamit ng third world sa paglalathala sa mga libro, sa mga aklat, at sa mga pag-aaral. Dito sa pababa na tayo, at hanggang ito yung kasalukuyan. Hindi na ganoong kataas yung paggamit kaysa sa dati. Ibig sabihin, sa panahong ito, noong 1980s, ay tampok na tampok sa kaisipan ng mga mamamayan, ay ng mga manunulat, mga nagsusulat tungkol sa daigdig, ang third world. Pero unti-unti itong nag-decline. By the way, kung may problema yung audio ko, ay pakibanggit lang. Okay lang ba yung audio?
Yes, Sir Bomen. Okay pa naman po yung
Okay
audio.
po.
Okay. Salamat.
Thank you.
Yan, salamat. Daming sumagot. Talagang nakakatuwa itong ating webinar, no? Kaya maraming salamat. Ayun, tingnan nyo dito sa Global South naman, yung mga bagong termino ito. At yung sinasabi nga, yung Global South, ito yung parang pumapalit sa third world na konsepto at kategorya. Alam ko, may mga, kung pinag-iisipan natin yan at pinag-ugnayan natin yung Global South sa third world, parang makita natin na parang yung mga characteristic ng third world ay nailipat doon sa Global South. Kumbaga, kung ano yung ating mga nararamdaman kapag binibigkas natin ng third world, napaka-third world ng kondisyon natin, pwedeng ilipat yan, napaka-global south ng ating kalagayan. But you don't hear that, people saying that, no? I mean, you don't hear people saying na, yung condition natin is so global south, no? I mean, you don't really hear that now. Mas third world pa rin ang naririnig natin, no? Siguro there's something there. O kaya baka mas patok yung tunog ng third world kaysa global south, no? I mean, Parang hindi nga masyadong academic yung tunog ng Global South, no? So, pero makita nyo na kahit ganun, kahit umaakyat ang terminong Global South na di umanong papalit sa Third World, ay hindi pa rin talaga kahit hanggang ngayon napapalitan ng ganap ang Third World, ano, ng Global South. In fact, there's a journal, a leading journal in international studies. It's called Third World Quarterly. So they haven't changed their name. It's still Third World Quarterly. Pinapanindigan ng TWQ, na journal na yon, yung kanilang pangalan dahil sa palagay nila ay hindi pa ito uh, ganap na kinakailangang palitan. Halimbawa, Global South Quarterly, I don't think they're even considering that. Sa UP Diliman ay meron tayong Third World Study Center. Ano? At yung Third World Study Center na yan, sa pagkakaalam ko, ay wala pa rin namang balak din na baguhin yung kanyang pangalan. Ano? Meron pang dating, meron pang pagkaunawa yung mga tao dito sa ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng Third World, halimbawa, Study Center. So yung Global South ay hindi naman kalayuan ding na-invento. Ano? 1969, inimbento ni Carl Oglesby. Isa siyang aktivista. At ang partikular na parang konteksto ng kanyang pag-imbento nito, ng terminong ito, ay may kaugnayan din sa iba pang mga dati ng mga pagtingin, no, na parang tila kung tingnan mo raw yung planeta, yung globo, ay yung mga mas mahihirap na mga bansa ay nasa bandang timog, ano, o nasa mas yung kalahati ng globo na nasa ibaba. Kumbaga, yung mga mas mahihirap na bahagi ng daigdig. Kahit yung tinatawag na, pero hindi yan very strict, no? As in, hindi yan very strict, no? Pero sa pangkalatan parang ganun. Ang tawag dyan ay Brandt line. Ano? I mean, may pag-aaral na ginawa na si Willy Brandt, yung isang German chancellor, na sabi niya ito, parang na pangalan sa kanya ito, yung Brandt line ay parang it cuts across the globe, and below, no, the part below the lower hemisphere is so-called the Global South, which sort of connects or correlates also with the degree of supposed development of those countries. Ayan, so okay, punta tayo ngayon. Ngayon, sa Pilipinas, magpapakita ko ng ilang halimbawa ng paglaganap ng Global South. Ng Third World muna, Third World. Ayan. So ito maganda itong magagamit ninyo para sa inyong mga estudyante dahil mga popular materials. No? Sorry. Okay. Mamaya pa ito. Balikan natin ito. No? Ito ay isang album. It's a record. No? Vinyl. Di ba? Nung alala nyo yung dati, mga plaka-plaka yan. Di ba? Wala nang ganun ngayon. Ay, meron pa rin ngayon. Actually, umuuso ngayon ang vinyl ulit, no, sa mga kabataan. Pero nung pumasok mga MP3, mga CD, parang pinagtatapon ng mga tao yung kanilang mga vinyl records. Pero ngayon, nahanap na yung mga kabataan. Ito ay isang record na lumabas 1984. Pilipino to. Sa Pilipinas ito lumabas. Baka alam niyo yung punk music. Ano? This is the first punk record in the Philippines. Ang pangalan ng banda ay Third World Chaos. No? Third World Chaos, 1984. Pasin niyo, no? Yung curve kanina, no? Yung ayan, no? 1980s, no? Talagang yung peak ng Third World, no? Ito, Third World Chaos. Ito ay banda na pinamunuan ni Tommy Tanchanco, isang anak ng isang Secretary Minister Tanchanco during the Marcos regime, na siya ay isang malaking crony. So si Tommy Tanchanco, anak ng isang big Marcos crony. At ito yung punk album nila na nilabas sa mainstream. Third World Chaos yung pangalan. Babalikan natin yan. No? Ang gusto kong kasi punk yan, baka hindi kayo masyadong familiar dyan. Punta tayo sa pop. No? Ito yung pop. Although hindi alam ni Miko ito dahil ibang generation ito, si Miko. No? Pero alam nito ni Professor Gabriel. Ano? American Junk, ano? Ng Apo Hiking Society. Ano? So, Apo Hiking Society. Lumabas ito 1987. See, ito yung pinaka-peak ng paggamit ng Third World, popularity of Third World. At ito yung panahon na yun nga, it's a revolution, it's a uprising. Inilabas ito 1987, pero nagawa na ito ng Apo Hiking Society. Before that, 1986, nirecord lang naman ito noong 1987, lumabas na 1987, American Junk. No? Ngayon, kapag pinag-aralan natin itong awitin ng Apo Hiking Society, marami tayong makukuha kung ano yung palagay nila sa Third World. I mean, magandang material ito para sa pagtuturo sa mga bata. Although hindi ko lang alam kung type ng mga bata ngayon mapakinggan ng mga Apo Hiking. Siguro alam pa rin ni Miko yung Apo Hiking Society, no? Siguro. Alam po ba yan? Oh. So, siyempre classic, di ba? Classic OPM yan eh. No? So, tingnan niyo yung lyrics, no? Uh, yung si Danny Javier, no? So, Danny Javier ang kumakanta nitong American Junk. It belongs to a very specific period in Philippine and global history. And you see yung kanilang notion of what the third world is reflects that particular period. No? So sabi, ito, hindi natin papatugtugin dahil baka magkaroon tayong copyright issues kapag pinutugtog natin dito ngayon, baka ma-block tayo ng ng mga nagbabantay sa copyright. Ang ano lang natin dito ay yung kanyang lyrics. Bagamat ang isang interesting dito sa American Junk, pinaghalo niya yung parang yung American parang type of parang sound music, tapos meron siyang mga kulintang ganyan na ginagamit, parang very strange yung combination. So ang sabi dito sa lyrics ay leave me alone to my third world devices. Look at that. So dito ay popular song, kinakanta nila para sa ordinaryong mamayan. Sabihin nila ay leave me alone to my third world devices. I don't need your technology. You just want my natural resources. Then you leave me poor and in misery. Third world blues is what I've got. What I got. So ito ay third world blues. Ibig sabihin, ito yung kalagayan ng, ito yung, kung blues, ay yung kalungkutan, yung mga problema, You've got the blues, meron ka mga problema. Third world blues is what I got. Now, what is third world blues? Batay dito sa, although may mga iba pang bahagi ang lyrics nito, Pero makita nyo rito ang kanyang punto. Kita nyo rito, naka-Amerikano yung ibang mga miyembro ng Apo Hiking Society. Yan yung mga mukhang mas mestisuhin. Yan. So, sila yung mga nag-stand for, for American junk. Ganyan. So, what do you see here? Sabi nila, ang isang problema ng relationship ng Pilipinas sa mga mas maunlad na bansa katulad ng Amerika, ang ginagawa lang, kinukuha yung natural resources ng bansa na yon. Kinukuha lang yung natural resources. Sabihin natin, hindi lang siguro yung mga pananim, hindi lang yung mga produkto na pang-agrikultura, kundi pati yung lakas pantao, yung yamang pantao ng isang bansa ay kinukuha. Malaking usapin nung 80s ang usapin ng brain drain. Mga Pilipino na napapadako sa ibang bahagi ng daigdig, pero yung kanilang talino ay nagagamit at napagpapaunlad ng mga mas mayayaman ng mga bansa at hindi ng kanilang sariling bansa. So, kinukuha yung mga natural resources and human resources, pero ang nangyayari ay mahirap pa rin ang bansa, nanatiling mahirap. So dito yung ideya nila ng third world. May relationship sa third world. Ang third world ay hindi lang siya ay yung mga mahirap. Ang punto dito ng kanta ng Apo Hiking, mahirap ang third world dahil yung kayamanan niya ay napupunta sa iba. So you get that? It's not something that is a characteristic of our country that it's poor, but naturally, in itself, but it's poor because it is in a relationship or in an exploitative relationship with another country. Ganyan, So ang nangyari dito daw ayon kay Danny Javier ay ayan, so binikuha yung natural resources namin tapos binibentuhan niyo kami ng industrial goods, ng technology. So lugi kami diyan dahil ang taas ng inyong sinisingil para sa technological goods. Samantalang ang baba ng bayad ninyo para sa aming mga natural resources. Although ang yaman natin sa natural resources. Alam nyo, that's why lagi tayong sinasakop ng mga ibang mga bansa. 'Di ba? Dahil nga ang yaman natin sa likas na yaman at sa yamang tao. Kaya tayo sinasakop. Naakit yung mga dayuhan sa atin. Pero kinukuha nila yan, ang ipinapalit, ay binibenta nila sa atin, technology, mga kotse at iba pa, mga cellphone ngayon. Wala pang cellphone noong panahon nila. You imagine this, noong panahon na ito, wala pang mga cellphone, wala pang internet, This is a very different kind of economy compared to what we will see later, So this reflects yung ganong klaseng parang thinking dati. Yung I don't need your technology, medyo baka mag-ano kayo dyan, no? Sabihin niyo, ba't ganyan, no? Parang gusto niyong tumira sa mga kuweba, gusto niyong tumira sa mga, hindi siguro ganun no? Pero I think yung reference dito ay yung pagbaha ng mga produktong industrial na kinakailangang na binibili natin sa mahal na halaga. Ano? Siguro hindi naman dito sinasabi na hindi tayo uunlad sa usapin ng kahit ng teknolohiya. Ngayon, pero ang isang kinakapture nito, nung phrase na I don't need your technology, or yung the sense of technology itself, is the problem of technology transfer. Technology transfer. This is a big problem for third world countries. Kasi ang gusto ng mga third world countries ay mag-develop. Ang isang paraan para mag-develop, actually, napaka-essential na paraan para mag-develop, technology transfer. Na mailipat yung mga teknolohiya ng industrialisasyon, mga matataas na uri ng teknolohiya ay mailipat sa atin, matuto tayong gamitin yan, matuto tayong mag-produce ng mga yan. Di ba? Ito yung nagagawa ng ibang mga bansa, no? Yung, halimbawa, South Korea, no? Mga Japan, mga China, no? Highly technological societies. In fact, in certain ways, some cities in China are even more highly technological than cities in the US, ano? So it's yung problema ng technology transfer. Kasi yung technology transfer, halos hinaharang 'yan. Halos imposible na mailipat sa atin yung technology dahil syempre alam naman na may hawak ng teknolohiya, ito yung aming advantage. Hindi namin ito ihayaan na lamang na mapunta sa inyo. Magamit ninyo, mawawala na kami ngayon ng aming bentahe sa pamilihan. Hindi na kayo bibili ng aming mga cellphone dahil gagawa kayo ng sarili ninyong cellphone, or whatever else other technological needs you have, So ito yung isang aspect nitong kanta na ito, Ngayon balikan natin yung third world chaos. Itong third world chaos. 1984 ito, punk yan, na grupo. Ngayon, yung tanong ninyo, saan kaya nanggaling yung term na third world chaos? Ibig sabihin, di ba parang it sounds good, no? Third world chaos. No? Parang for a band, it's not a bad name, no? Third world chaos. Pero tumingin tayo tumingin tayo ulit sa Google Ngram, At sa Google Ngram, ang lumabas sa unang mga gamit ng third world chaos. Ito ay lumabas sa mga publications ng Central Intelligence Agency ng CIA, Dahil ang problema halimbawa noong 1978, dahil ang mga problema nila ay third world chaos. Halimbawa, noong 1979, nandiyan yung mga Sandinista. In-overthrow nila yung US-led government sa Nicaragua. Sa Pilipinas, precisely, noong panahon na umaasa na yung mga Pilipino doon sa diktadura ni Marcos, sabihin ng mga Pinoy, nag-oorganisa kami para maiwaksin natin itong diktadura na ito, para magkaroon kami ng mga kalayaan sa pamamahayag, kalayaang akademiko, mga kalayaan mga fundamental na kalayaang pantao ay maigit na namin, may paglaban namin. At saka syempre yung kahirapan ay maiwaksin natin sa ating lipunan. Kaya yung mga mamayan ay nagsasama-sama. Yung mga mamayan ay kumikilos ng sama-sama para makamit ang layunin ng pagpapalit ng diktadura, ng inaasahan sana nilang mas demokratiko na pamahalaan. Ang tawag sa ganong organisado, madamdamin, yung kumakanta ng ibon mang may layang lumipad, mga ganyan, mga grupo na yan, mga naghahangad ng kagalingan para sa kanilang bansa at karapatan para sa mamayan. Ang tawag ng CIA sa mga ganyan ay third world chaos. Third world chaos. Because it puts US interests in danger. In danger. Kaya yun yung isang strange thing dito sa punk album na to, Ang kanilang ginamit na pangalan ay yung parang yung perspektiba ng Central Intelligence Agency sa mga nagaganap ng mga pagkilos sa mga third world countries na parang labag sa interest ng Estados Unidos. Ayan, so ito Upwike Society, this song is part of the third world chaos. Dahil kini-question nila yung umiiral na kaayusan, but they're not chaotic. Ibig sabihin, it's not chaos. It's a purposive movement, with goals, objectives, ganyan, etc. So, yeah, so ito yung mga ilang mga material. I think magagamit niyo ito para sa inyong mga discussion, sa inyong mga klase. Ngayon, sa more academic side, makita natin na ito, ito ay mula 1994 hanggang 2020. Kita nyo, napaka-astronomical ng paggamit ng Global South. Yung kanyang sa mga academic journals. Sobrang bilis ng pag-akyat ng, alam ko marami sa ating hindi interested sa academic journals dito, maliban kung kailangan nyo for tenure, promotion, or etc. Pero ito ay, makita nyo dito sa graph na to, exponential increase in the use of the global South during the 2000s. And itong graph na to, ginawa ito ng na-publish doon sa Third World Quarterly na binanggit ko nga kanina. Nasabi nga nila, Third World Quarterly kami, pero tingnan nyo, yung uso ngayon ay ang Global South. Ngayon, yung Global North, yun yung supposed opposite, yung parang First World. Pero pansinin nyo, hindi ganong ginagamit yan. Hindi kasing dami ng gamit kaysa sa Global South. Dahil, siguro for various reasons, pero siguro pwedeng pag-isipan natin. Dahil mas tampok ang mga problema ng Global South. I mean, why does the First World have to talk about itself? Or why does the Global North have to talk about itself? And the Global South doesn't care about talking about the Global North? Siguro parang wala masyadong mag-uusap-usap tungkol dyan. Pero kung Global South, mga problema, mga usapin, mga hamon, kailangan pag-usapan ang Global South. Ayan. Okay, so ito naman ay isang graph mula sa Google Trends. Alam ko, nung panahon ng eleksyon, may mga tumitingin sa Google Trends. Pinapakita ng Google Trends yung tawag dito, kung ano yung sikat na mga search terms sa iba't ibang dako ng daigdig. Kumbaga, halimbawa, sa inyong bansa ay maraming naghahanap ng Global South, edi mas magiging matingkad kayo dito sa mapa na ito. So pinapakita ng mapa, yung blue na yan, kung saan ginagamit ang salitang Global South at sa dako ng daigdig. And you can see, most of it is in the Global North. So, yung mga nag-usap-usap tungkol sa Global South, ang karamihan ay ang Global North. Itong nasa itaas na bahagi, United States, Canada, tapos itong European countries, they're always talking about the Global South, about the problems of the Global South, how to uplift the Global South, etc., diba, how to address issues in the Global South. Interesting na napakatingkad dito sa South Africa, pasinin niyo to. Ang discussion tungkol sa Global South at sa Botswana, sa Africa. So I think they're talking yun nga dahil nga kung merong Global South par excellence, sa pag-iisip ng mga Europeans, that's Africa. That's why let's say yung isang outpost nila dito sa South Africa ay matingkad ang gamit ng Global South. Tignan nyo, Pilipinas din ay medyo maraming mga nasa top 10 na gumagamit sa Google Trends. This is from 2004 to 2020. Yung data na to. Malakas pa rin sa Pilipinas itong red, third world. Look at that. Global North yung yellow. Ang Pilipinas ay isang pumapasok sa ganitong diskurso. Sa ganitong pag-uusap-usap tungkol sa Global South, Global North. Ngayon, ito, Google Trends pa rin ito. From January 1, 2004 to 2020. Yung red, ito yung ito yung third world. Yung blue ay yung Global South. Yung yellow, Global North. You see, interesting, At this point, merong nangyari. Diba? Sa buong period na to, never na-exceed ng Global South ang third world. Pero at this point, December 2020, nalampasan ng Global South for a brief moment ang paggamit ng third world. What happened in December 2020? Naisip niyo ba yan? Ano nangyari bakit biglang nag-usap-usap yung mga tao tungkol sa Global South? Ni-release ang unang vaccine para sa COVID, Pfizer, on December 11, 2020. So, look at this, Look at this. Ni-release ang unang vaccine ng Pfizer, approved vaccine. Tapos, nung December 11, tapos ang daming balita, Trump was going to buy millions and millions of doses of Pfizer for the United States. Europe was going to buy millions and millions of doses of Pfizer for Europe. So bakit biglang naging tampok ang Global South? Dahil ang isang nangyari sa pandemic, lalong napatingkad ang agwat sa pagitan ng Global North at saka ng Global South. Ano? Okay, meron ng vaccine. Pero yung mga milyon, yung mga 80% of humanity na nasa Global South, nangangailangan ng vaccine. Pero yung 10%, 20% na nasa Global North, sila ang unang makakakuha ng mga vaccine. Dahil sila yung may mga resources, sila yung may mga pera para makabili ng mga vaccine na yan. Kaya ang tanong ng mga tao noon, I think nung December na yan, no? Period ng December na yan, tanong nila, naku, nabibili na ang lahat ng mga doses ng Pfizer at ng iba pang mga i-release na mga vaccines. What is going to happen to the people in the Global South? Right? What is going to happen? Ano? So that suddenly became a big problem. Ayan. So, makita nyo, may mga ganyang blips dito sa ating data that you can actually try to explain. Ayan. So, okay, naubusin natin ng oras, no? Sorry. Ito yung graphically speaking, ito yung Global South, no? Siyempre kasama ang Pilipinas diyan, no? Ayan, no, Global South, kasama ang Pilipinas, Indonesia, itong mga sa Southeast Asia, 'di ba? Hindi naman to surprising, of course, Australia is not part of the Global South, New Zealand is not part of the Global South. Kaya pero makita niyo yan yung generally that's the supposed Global South where around 80% of humanity lives. Ibig sabihin ang dambuhalang mayorya ng ating planeta ay nakatira sa bahaging ito ng daigdig, At yung mga problema niya ng Global South ay mga problema ng pinakamayorya ng mga populasyon ng daigdig. Kaya kailangang maharap ito at matugunan. Ngayon, yun nga, dahil medyo kulang oras, magbibigay ako ng 3 definisyon ng Global South na sa tingin ko ay bagamat magkakaiba-iba, bagamat yung ibang baka nga hindi magkasundo yung ibang definition na yan, ay baka pwede natin maipagtagpo-tagpo rin. Ayan, okay, so mabilis lang to. Ayan. Amigo, may time pa ba na konti?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir. No worries. We can extend a little bit. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Ayan. So, sorry, ito pala, no? This is a recent article, May 6, 2021. Ibig sabihin, kamakailan lang talaga, no? So, nakaraan. So, this is from Al Jazeera, from online newspaper. Sabi dito, no? So, ito diniscuss, ito yung Global South ang ginagamit na term. Hindi na third world, no? Rich countries drained $152 trillion from the Global South since 1960. Ito isang pag-aaral na ginawa ng ilang mga ekonomista sa ibang bansa. Ngayon, ito yung kanilang explanation for this so-called drain. Ibig sabihin, ulitin ko lang sinasabi ng Upwalking Society. Mahirap ang Global South dahil ang yumayaman sa kanilang kayamanan ay yung Global North. So, ano raw yung analysis ng mga ito, ng mga ekonomistang ito? This flow of net appropriation occurs because prices are systematically lower in the South than in the North. For instance, wages paid to Southern workers, mga Pilipino, are on average 1/5 the level of Northern wages. This means that for every unit of embodied labor and resources that the South imports from the North, they have to export many more units to pay for it. Lugi, Ang parehong trabaho na ginawa ng isang manggagawang Pilipino, yung bayad lang sa kanya ay 1/5 ng ibabayad sa isang manggagawang, halimbawa, manggagawang Europeo o manggagawang Amerikano. Kaya ang nangyayari dito, kung bibili tayo sa kanila, napakataas ng ating ibabayad para sa produktong yon. Samantalang kung bibili sila mula sa atin, ay napakababa naman. Kaya sa pamamagitan ng ganitong paraan, na magkaiba yung mga presyo ng, halimbawa, sa usapin na ito ng mga sahod ng mga manggagawa ay hindi pantay. Parehong trabaho, pero ibang bayad. Ibig sabihin yan, ang napupuntang tubo mula rito ay patungo sa Global North. Dehado at lugi ang Global South. Parang yan sa usapin ng sahod ng mga kababaihan at ng mga kalalakihan. Diba? Hanggang ngayon, on the average, ang mga sahod ng mga babaeng manggagawa ay mas mababa sa mga sahod ng mga manggagawang mga lalaki. Di ba? Hanggang ngayon, ang mga pwesto at posisyon sa iba't ibang mga empresa ay yung mga mas matataas na posisyon ay hawak ng mga lalaki at yung mga mas mababang posisyon ay hawak ng mga babae. Sa gayon, wag naman natin sabihin na kasalanan ng mga lalaki. Sistema yan. Sistema ang umiral na yan. Yun yung patriarchal na sistema. Ibig sabihin, yung differential, yung mas mababang napupuntang sahod sa mga babae, napupunta yan sa iba. Ibig sabihin, may ibang nakikinabang doon sa mas mababang sahod. Pero pag ipantay mo yung sahod ng lalaki at babae, ibig sabihin, wala nang differential na pwedeng pakinabangan ng, halimbawa, ng mga lalaki na nasa mga mas mataas na mga pwesto o posisyon sa mga empresa o sa mga organisasyon. Diba? Kaya ito yung isang analysis, no, very simple analysis. I think not simple, but it's the idea is there, maintindihan natin na ito yung mekanismo kung bakit luging-lugi ang third world at saka ang global south sa sa ganitong ugnayan. Yan. So, okay, so doon sa tatlong definition na lamang para dahil baka maubusan tayo ng oras. No? Ito yung galing kay Howard Brayboy Wagner at saka Mayhold. No? I think interesting yung discussion nila tungkol sa ano yung tatlong posibleng definition ng Global South. Una, social metrics based. Ibig sabihin, tingnan natin, ano yung income per capita? Kung ito yung ating cutoff, yung nasa ibaba nito, ito yung Global South, yung nasa itaas niyan ay Global North. Tingnan natin yung Human Development Index ng United Nations, yung HDI. It includes life expectancy, educational attainment, income. Ibig sabihin, kung mas mahaba yung mga buhay natin, nasa Global North tayo. Kung maikli, if our lives are nasty, brutal, and short, that means we're in the Global South. Education, also, kung mataas yung ating educational level, di mataas tayo sa Global North. Kaya parang ganun lang, So, ang tawag ngayon sa mga Global South, ng mga bansa underdeveloped, less developed, lower and lower middle income countries, they're marginalized and they're poor. Kumbaga, ito yung halos layman's definition natin ng third world. Mahirap. Nako, talagang isang kahig, isang tuka. Napaka third world naman yan. Ngayon, ang problema sa ganito, parang sinusuri ng hiwa-hiwalay ang mga bansa at parang nilalagay sa isang karera. Di ba? So masabihin, bakit ganun? Sa Global North, ang unlad nila. Bakit ganun sa Global South? So mangyari, dahil hindi pinapag-aralan sila bilang magkaugnay na fenomeno, kundi bilang magkakahanay lamang sa iyong Excel spreadsheet, ang lalabas, sabihin mo, siguro yung mga tao doon, tamad sa Global South. Sabihin mo, tamad yung mga tao doon. O kaya, hindi sila marunong. They have some cultural traits which block development and progress. There's something wrong with their mentality, their state of mind. They're not entrepreneurial enough. May mga iba pa nga, race ang kanilang ginagamit na race ang ginagamit. May iba religion ang ginagamit nila mga paliwanag. May iba environmental conditions ang sinasabi nilang mga dahilan. And this sort of leads to what is called essentialism. That dahil ganyan ang katangian nila, ganyan sila forever. Unless may mangyaring ibang bagay, na talagang magbabago ng ganong klaseng kondisyon. Halimbawa, sabihin ng mga mananakop ng mga Europeo, problema sa mga Pilipino, mga tamad, Sabi ng mga, so sasakupin natin sila para sila ay maging mas masipag. Tuturuan natin sila kung paano mas maging masipag. We will develop them, we will teach them, how to be civilized and how to be progressive. Diba? Ganyan. Yan, so may bibenta ng putas. So ayan. So ang problema dito sa ganitong mga social metrics based, pwede maging tendency niyan ay hindi niya tingnan ang mga fenomeno ng Global South kaugnay ng Global North. At yung mga ugnayan na yan, yung proseso kung bakit naging mahirap ang Global South, kung paano yumaman ang Global North. Hindi magkahiwalay yan na mga fenomeno. Pero useful pa rin ang social metrics based. Kasi parang experiential yan eh. Ito, ang hirap ng transportation dito, baka third world country ito. It still has some kind of basis, Ayan. Ngayon, yung nation state based ay yung nanggaling ito, pwede niyong i-research pa ito, kung magkapanong kayo. Nagsimula itong nung pag nagtipon-tipon yung mga bansa na mga tinatawag nating ah, kakalaya mula sa mga mananakop. 'Di ba? No, pagkaraan ng ikalawang digmang pandaigdig, ay napakaraming mga bansa sa daigdig. Biglang dumami ang mga bansa sa daigdig dahil maraming mga lumaya sa kanilang mga dating mga mananakop na Europeo. Dahil sinasabi pagkatapos ng ikalawang digmang pandaigdig ay hindi na katanggap-tanggap o lehitimo yung dating kolonyalistang proyekto ng Europa. Kaya kailangan ng yung mga bansa ay lumaya o ipaglaban nila yung kanilang kalayaan katulad ng Vietnam na talagang hanggang 1974, gera sila laban sa first against France and then against the United States para makamit ang kanilang independensya. Pero noong 1955, ito yung makasaysayang Bandung Conference sa Indonesia na pinatawag ni dating Pangulo doon, ni Sukarno, at doon ay nagpunta ang maraming mga kinatuan mula sa iba't ibang bansa, kasama ang Pilipinas, para pag-usapan yung paano ba uunlad ng ating mga bansa bilang mga bagong laya sa mga dating mananakop. Of course, ang kolonyalismo, alam naman natin, mapagsamantala yan. Talagang ang layunin ng kolonyalismo, hututin ang lahat ng ating yaman para dalhin sa kanila, di ba? We were making them rich, right? As colonies. Pero parang napansin nila, even after the colonial era, but hindi pa rin natin malampasan yung ganong klaseng kalakarang pandaigdig. Kaya nag-isip sila ng you can look at this, no, non-aligned movement, na hindi raw aligned sa capitalist North at saka sa Second World na Soviet Union. Tapos 1964, group of seven, nagtipon-tipon ng mga ito, dati 77 countries yan, na nagkaroon ng block sa loob ng United Nations na mga majority block, ano? Pero control ng UN ng minority, ano? Na yung mga mayaman, ano? Pero yung majority block yan in terms of voting. Kung voting lang ang pamamalakad ng UN, edi panalo ang mga mas mahirap na bansa doon, pero hindi, ano? Kinuha pa rin ng gumawa ng structure ang UN para mga mayayaman na bansa ang may control sa UN. So 1966, ano, after yung Bandung ay yung Tricontinental Conference sa Havana, ano, ng Cuba. And here, ano, nagpatawag ni Fidel Castro, ano, so nagsama-sama diyan yung representatives from 82 countries, not necessarily liberated countries, even countries which are still fighting for national liberation. And eventually, yung kanilang plano ay New International Economic Order. Ano? 1974, ibig sabihin, kung merong old economic order na dominado yung ng mga tinatawag ngayong Global North, kailangan natin ng isang bagong international economic order kung saan makakaunlad ang mga dating bansang hindi maunlad. Kung saan makapagpapaunlad ng mga teknolohiya, ng industriya, ng mga agrikultura, yung mga bansang dating mga sinakop at pinagsamantalahan. So they wanted to look for alternative national development paths. Hindi yung dictated ng mga IMF o kaya World Bank. They wanted to look, how can we develop on a humane basis, on a basis that cares for the environment, that caters to the needs of the people, that develops in a way that is not destructive and oriented towards war. Ano? Yun yung kanilang nakikita na, so dati ay taga-supply lang tayo ng raw materials at saka cheap labor. Paano natin mababago yan? Parang hindi na ganyan ang kalakaran. So, ayan, so matindi ang sa ganitong approach ng Global South, ano? Parang third world pa rin. O parang third world, same as third world. Parang mga bansa na magsasama-sama para itaguyod yung kanilang mga kapakanan at kagalingan. So halos Global South is almost like third world kapag ganito. No? Ngayon, so ito yung second definition. No? Makita natin. So yung first definition, social metrics based, bibilangin nyo lang kung ano yung mga income per capita. Yung ikalawa naman, ay tingnan mo yung global structure. Ano? Ibig sabihin, ito yung mga bansang mahihirap, paano kung magsama-sama sila para maigit ang kanilang mga kagalingan at karapatan sa isang bagong global na sistema, 'di ba? Ngayon, yung partikularidad ng Global South ay lilitaw sa social movement-based na definition. Ano? Unang-una, ang sinasabi sa Global South ay ang lahat ng mga issues sa Global South. Ito, no, global inequality, mass poverty, labor migration, war, refugee crisis, attacks on indigenous peoples, disasters and ecological devastation, pandemics, no. Itong mga matinding mga issues sa Global South ay magkakaugnay-ugnay sa Global South at saka sa buong daigdig. Hindi natin matutugunan ang mga problemang ito sa nation state level lang, 'di ba? 'Di ba, ang usapin ng labor migration ng Pilipinas. Kaya bang maresolba ng Pilipinas ang problema usapin ng labor migration? Pati yung kapakanan ng mga manggagawa sa ibang mga dako ng daigdig na Pilipino sa usapin sa loob lang ng nation state? Hindi. This is a transnational issue. So, at yung mga mamamayan ng Global South, nakikita nila yan na kailangan tayo ay magsama-sama para maharap itong mga hamon na ito. Hindi lang each person or each country for itself. No? It can't be done. Ano? Because the scale of the issues are global. Tapos ito pa, the South is global. Yung power of the South can be projected on a global scale. No, yung mga social movement based habang lumalaki yung mga pagkilos ng mga mamamayan, nagkakabigkis-bigkis, lumalakas ang mga pagkilos ng mga transnational na mga pagkilos ng mga manggagawang migrante, ano, ng mga nagkakaisang mga indigenous people sa iba't ibang dako ng daigdig, ng mga refugees, ano, ah, ng mga mahihirap, ano, nagkakabigkis-bigkis mga manggagawa ay nagsasama-sama para matugunan yung mga hamon nilang kinakaharap sa global na antas, doon lamang sa ganung paraan matutugunan ang mga ito. So dito, no, yun yung isang paglampas ng global south perspective, ano, na medyo importante pa rin ang nation state, no, pero maraming mga issues na kailangan maresolba sa isang transnational space of resistance. In this case, if you look at it, kahit sa north may south, kahit sa global north, maraming mga mahirap na lugar sa global north. Maraming inaapi sa iba't ibang mga pamamaraan. Mga manggagawang migrante, mga refugee, war refugees, etc. sa global north. At marami pang mga iba pang mga usapin. Marami mga issues ng global south sa global north. Tapos marami ring kahit sa global south, meron ding global north. Ano? Isang halimbawa diyan yung Singapore, right smack in the middle of the global south. Hong Kong, or sa Pilipinas, if you look sa Philippines, baka pwede sabihin natin yung parang north ng Philippines ay Metro Manila or something like that, no? Parang sabihin mo nga, pagpasok mo ng mall, parang first world dito, di ba? Parang global north dito sa mall na ito. Although wala na nagmo-mall masyado ngayon dahil sa pandemic, but I mean that's an old example. Pero yun yung parang katangian na hindi na simpleng, napakahirap isipin na simpleng ano lang, espasyo lang yan. Ano ito, doon south, dito north, nagkakatagus-tagusan na ang mga usapin sa dalawang para magkakahiwalay na yan. So, ano yung ginagawa ngayon ng social movement based na perspective? Naghahanap pa rin sila ng alternatibo sa global na sistema. Naghahanap pa rin katulad ng third world. Ano? Pero ito ay siguro ang mas mahalaga dito ay yung pagkakabigkis-bigkis ng mga kilusang ng mamamayan sa iba't ibang mga bansa ng daigdig. So they're organizing transnational people's movements. Ano? For example, ang isang katangian nito ay halimbawa yung sa Hong Kong, halimbawa, yung mga manggagawang migrante ron na Pilipino, sila nag-organize ng mga manggagawang Bangladesh, manggagawang Indonesian, manggagawang Thai. Sila yung mga Pilipino nag-organize. Kaya nagkakasama-sama yung mga iba't ibang mga lahi, dahil iisa yung problema nila bilang mga manggagawang migrante sa mga lugar na yon. Kahit magkakaiba yung kanilang mga wika. Kaya dito kinakailangan, tinatawag ni David Harvey na isang scholar to, cosmopolitanism from below. Ibig sabihin, there's cosmopolitanism from above. Yung mga mayaman, yung travel, no, ganyan, no, Paris, London, ganyan, New York. Pero there's cosmopolitanism from below. Yung malawak na perspektiba ng mga manggagawang naglalakbay, mga refugee, na sa iba't ibang lugar ng daigdig, lumalawak ang kanilang kaisipan, nabubuksan ng kaisipan, na kaya nilang makipag-ugnay galing sa iba't ibang mga bansa, iba't ibang mga kultura, iba't ibang mga wika. Ito yung cosmopolitanism from below. Ito yung mga kwento at salaysay nila ng kanilang mga pagtugon at pakikibaka para sa kanilang karapatan at kagalingan kahit saan mang dako ng daigdig. Kaya finally, the Global South is a project. It's not necessarily a location. It's a project to emancipate, to address no these very grave issues. Alam ko para sa atin minsan sabihin natin ay climate change di yan masyadong importante ano. Wala naman ako nakita pagbabago sa labas ano. Pero sinasabi natin yan no. Pero sa totoo lang climate change ay isang kailangan nating tugunan sa isang transnational level ano with strong movements ano pushing for the implementation of measures no that will prevent the worst from happening you know in this century ano sinasabi nga. At yan, dahil ayaw ng mga gobyerno na kumilos sa ganyang bagay, ano yung pag-asa? Yung mga mamamayan ng mga bansa na yung kinabukasan ng mga anak nila, kinabukasan ng planeta ang usapin dito. Kaya kinakailangan niya ng isang malawakan, transnational na mga kilusan no, na alternatibo sa mapag-aksaya ng pagsamantala ano at malupit na mga kondisyon. Kung sabi nga ni Professor Gabriel kanina, mga giyera na kumakalat sa ating kapaligiran. So, ito yung tatlong posibleng definisyon ng Global South. Sa tingin ko hindi sila ganap na magkakasalungat. Pwede nating unawain silang magkakaugnay, di ba? Ang isang malaking problema lang talaga sa social metrics based. Yun nga, minsan sa explanation kung bakit ganung mahirap kayo, ay hindi niya pinapaliwanag yung ugnayan ni kolonyalismo. Hindi niya matingnan ang kasaysayan na yan. Wala sa kanyang pagtingin ang kasaysayan na yan. Neo-kolonyalismo, imperialismo, wala. Kaya kailangan natin maging critical din dito sa social metrics based, although experientially, it is very close to what we actually feel, ano, experience around us. Ayan. So, okay, so sorry at lumampas oras. Maraming salamat. Rico.
Thank you, sir. Ayan. Thank you po, Dr. Ramon Guillermo, for that very insightful lecture on the Global South, no? And basically, I think for me, no, the main takeaway that we can gather from Sir Bowman's lecture is really how we can adopt itong framework of the Global South and the Global North, no, to sort of explain and teach, no, the contemporary world course. No. Certainly, there were a lot of themes that were discussed, no, even methods that we can gather from Sir Bowman's lecture, and perhaps we can also use in our own classes. For instance, references from pop culture, from modern day methodologies in doing social science research, right? So thank you very much again, Sir Bowman. And now we will proceed to our second lecture for this morning. I hope everyone is still well and are still with us, no, in today's lecture on the contemporary world. So we have guests, no, coming in. We have guests from UP Mindanao, Bulacan Polytechnic College, Gapan City College, St. Francis Xavier College, Pasig City College, Liceo de Cagayan University, Cebu Technological University, Misamis Oriental Institute of Science and Technology, Sultan Kudarat State University, and many more. No? So we will continue to take track of those guests from different SUCs coming in. No? And I'm personally surprised and overwhelmed with the number of attendees, no, coming from different parts of the country. So welcome and thank you very much again for attending. So now we move on to our second lecture for this morning. So the second lecture will be delivered by Professor Ruth Dosterio Rico. No? Dr. Ruth Dosterio Rico is a professor of political science and currently Associate Dean for Academic Affairs of the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy here in the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She served as the chair of the Department of Political Science from November 1, 2010 to October 2013. Professor Dosterio Rico obtained her political science degrees from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She teaches courses in political analysis, research methods, environmental politics, the legislative process, and the general education course, which is social science too, or social, economic, and political thought. She has done research and published several journal articles and book chapters on environment and politics, policy making, indigenous peoples' rights, and migration. She also co-authored a textbook on understanding culture, society, and politics. And this textbook is used for a core subject in senior high school. And in the summer of 2017, Professor Dosterio Rico served as visiting professor at the Department of Political Science and the Center for East Asian Studies at the University of Montreal in Quebec, Canada. Aside from her teaching and administrative duties, Professor Lusterio Rico engages in volunteer work as program manager of LEAD, which is a leadership program for female senior high school and university students, and a project of LINANGAN Youth Foundation Incorporated, which is a private non-stock nonprofit foundation. On a personal note, Professor Lusterio Rico is a senior colleague of mine in the department where I come from, and she has always been very generous in sharing her knowledge and mentoring me along with my junior cohort on how to effectively handle GE courses like this, whether in a face-to-face or a remote learning setup. So I can assure everyone in this lecture that we will learn a lot from Ma'am Ruth's presentation this morning. So without further ado to everyone, let us welcome our second speaker for this morning, Professor Ruth Lusterio Rico. Ma'am Ruth, you have the virtual floor po.
Good morning and thank you very much, Miko, for that very generous introduction. So I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Una po sa lahat ay binabati ko ang 934 na kasama natin ngayon sa webinar. Kasama po ang mga nasa Facebook at I think YouTube, no? And before I begin, I also would like to thank and congratulate the UP Diliman General Education Center sa pangunguna po ni Professor Nancy Kimuel Gabriel at kasama ang staff ng GE Center. Congratulations po for holding another webinar for our higher education institution, GE teachers. And it's really my pleasure to be part of this project of the GE Center. I think masasabi na isa sa mga pamilya ko sa UP Diliman ang GE Center. Kasama ang mga miyembro ng GE Committee ng UP Diliman. And I think this morning, yung ibibigay ko po na talk, ang isi-share ko po ngayon sa inyo, I think would provide siguro some theoretical aspect, no? Yung introductory remarks ni Prof. Gabriel at yung talk ni Prof. Guillermo, masasabi natin yun yung data, no, dito sa pag-uusapan, yung gusto kong ibigay sa inyo ngayong umaga. So allow me to share my screen, and this is just really a few ideas on how to teach the contemporary world, no? The course, the contemporary world. Sa UP po ay walang direct counterpart ang GE course na ito, pero katulad po ng nabanggit ni Miko kanina, marami pong iba't ibang mga kurso kung saan natatalakay yung mga topics, no? At gayon din na pwede nating sabihin na target, no, yung course learning outcomes ng kursong the contemporary world. So masasabi natin na siguro iba lang yung style sa UP, but in terms of content ay yun din po yung binibigay namin sa aming mga estudyante. So ito po yung gusto kong ito yung outline, no, ng mga gusto kong i-discuss sa inyo ngayong umaga. First and foremost, my main objective po is really to share some ideas on how to teach the topics in the contemporary world and focusing on, of course, the main concept of globalization. So earlier, dun sa talk ni Professor Guillermo, nandun po yung mga iba't ibang mga issues, no? And I think that he was able to provide, no, some insights on how we can help our students better understand what is going on in our contemporary world. So sa bahagi ko naman po, I would like to just review the course learning outcomes and focus on, as I said earlier, the main concept of globalization. Ano ba yung mga makakatulong, no, in terms of helping our students understand what this concept means, and maybe by going to a discussion of some key concepts such as global governance, regionalism, and sustainable development, we will be able to put together, no, concretely, what this idea of how our contemporary world looks like right now, no. Finally, I end with the summary of some teaching strategies. So I conclude this sharing with some ideas, no, on teaching strategies, especially for those who are still teaching online or remotely or blended, no, no matter how probably we may refer to it, no. So okay, let's move to the review of the course learning outcomes. So nakuha ko po ito syempre dun sa syllabus, no, ng the contemporary world. So these are the 5 competencies. In terms of competencies, these are the course learning outcomes. So I'd like to just quickly go over each one of these learning outcomes. In terms of competencies, in other words, what we expect our students to be able to do at the end of the semester after taking the course, no, are the following. First is to distinguish different interpretations of and approaches to globalization. I think it's very important po for us teachers to be able to expose our students to different perspectives, no? So what I will highlight after this slide would be some ideas on how we can do this, no? So in terms of the different views or interpretations and approaches in looking at globalization. And second is to describe the emergence of global economic, political, social, and cultural systems. So again, the students, I think, should be helped, no, in terms of making sense of this, no, of the entire global economic, political, social, and cultural systems that exist, that are currently there. Third is to analyze the various contemporary drivers of globalization. And fourth is to understand the issues confronting the nation state. So as I said earlier, the issues have already been provided, no, so perhaps as a context to this discussion that is a little bit theoretical, no, kung mapapansin po ninyo. And then finally, to assess the effects of globalization on different social units and their responses. I think the purpose of GE courses is to really try to help contribute to the development of critical thinking in our students. So not for them to be critical at everything, no, of course not, but to really how to discern. Okay, importante po ito sa palagay ko ngayon, no, to discern what these ideas are, tama ba ito, but discern for themselves, no. So our role is really to try to give them, kumbaga po, ayan cafeteria, ayan ang mga ulam, no, iba-iba, no. So sila yung mamimili, pero meron din silang nadidevelop na criteria kung paano po nila yon pipiliin. Okay. So let's now go to the main concept, after reviewing these course learning outcomes. So the main concept of the course is globalization, no? But really, what is it, no? So binasa ko po yung mga yung listahan ng mga comments and questions na nilagay nyo dun sa registration, at madami po doon sa mga komento, sa mga tanong ay nakatuon doon paano ba ituturo itong konsepto na to. Paano matutulungan yung mga estudyante na maintindihan ano ba yung globalization, no? So indeed, it is what one author wrote, no, that it is a slippery and elusive concept, no? So bakit po, no? Kasi alam natin there are different definitions. Iba-iba, no? Iba-iba yung tingin ng mga tao tungkol sa globalization. And therefore there are varied views, no, of this concept. It is used to refer to many things. For example, okay, a process. Globalization as a process. So meron tayong mga siguro na encounter na mga readings, no, na mga articles that refer to globalization as a concept or a policy. So some people, when they talk about globalization, it seems that it is a policy or a marketing strategy, no, a predicament, or even an ideology. So because of this, okay, again, we can say that there are different ways by which globalization has been seen and therefore understood. Okay? And there are, of course, distinctive forms of globalization. First, we have economic globalization, cultural globalization, and political globalization. That makes it really a big concept. No? Actually po, yung course itself is I understand that it is quite difficult to handle because napaka-loaded po nung kurso. Ang daming well, loaded yung content nung course. That's why I understand that this is really a very important course for us, for teachers in higher education institutions to teach. Okay? So going back to globalization, this makes this nature of the concept makes it really quite challenging to teach. So I'll go to some suggestion on tackling this concept in a little while. So let's go a little bit to the last point on the distinctive forms of globalization. I think we should clarify, in order to understand what globalization means, we should clarify how do we understand the world. So pupuntahan po natin yan. Okay, so muna tayo, break tayo ng konti dito. So these are some images that I found on the internet while thinking about the forms of globalization. So unlike Prof. Guillermo, Apo Hiking Society siya. Ako BTS, So ayan po sa screen, hindi joke lang. Syempre 80s kid din po ako. Undergrad sa UP nung 1980s, Pero naghanap ako ng medyo, of course, contemporary para sa ating mga estudyante. McDonald's has been in the country for many years, I think since the 80s, Pero dito po sa slide na to, nandito po yung iba-ibang forms ng globalization, So right now, because we were brought back home, or wala tayong masyadong choice, especially nung 2020, 2021 and up to last year, nasa bahay lang tayo lagi, Hindi lang naman Netflix, pero marami ding iba, na mga platforms. I also discovered that there are free platforms for movies and series streaming in the internet, So internet is a very important indicator of globalization, because ang ibig sabihin po ng globalization is making people connected, So yung dati na ang lalayo, halimbawa yung mga siguro, obvious naman po sa kulay ng buhok ko, hindi po yan dyed, natural po yan. Gray na po ang aking buhok, silver, na nung 1980s, kung gusto mo makipagkaibigan sa isang tao na nasa ibang bansa, kailangan mong sumulat, through mail. So bago makarating doon sa kaibigan mo, yung sulat mo, it will take some days, Pero ngayon, napakadali na. So hindi na nga email, kundi sa Facebook Messenger at iba-iba pa. Sabi nila yung Facebook pang tita, tito, sa mga bata, mayroong mga bagong platforms na. So globalization makes the societies connected with one another. In economic terms, ito po, this is the logo that I was able to download from the internet of the World Trade Organization. So magkakarugtong din po ito, itong mga na-experience, so sa ating mga kabataan, culturally, exposed sila sa iba't ibang mga forms ng art, So hindi lang pop culture, kung hindi marami pang iba. Of course, sa pagkain, hindi lang McDonald's, meron pa rin ibang mga klase ng pagkain din. Napili ko lang yung McDonald's, dahil parang siya yung sumisimbolo ng pinakamatagal na simbolo ng connection ng mga societies. And of course, politically, you have here, well, this is a meeting of the powerful, the global north leaders, So panahon ni Barack Obama yata ito, medyo matagal na rin, Pero yan po, gusto ko lang ipakita yung iba-ibang forms ng globalization sa slide na to. But again, going back to the point that I would like to make, we have to make sense of the world that we live in. So how do we do that? So we are understanding the world and making sense of it requires us to understand how the state and the international system works. No? So in the introduction given by by Professor Enrico Gloria earlier, he introduced me as being part of the faculty of the Department of Political Science. So ito po ang pinanggagalingan ko. No? So in political science, of course, we teach different levels of politics from the local to the international. So totoo lang, hindi po ako expert sa international politics. No? So mas siguro mamaya sa mga tanong, hingi ako ng tulong kay Nico sa pagsagot. But again, no, this theories, no, that we call in the discipline of political science are used to explain and capture the meaning of real life meaning of real life events in the form of abstract interpretations and generalized assumptions. So theories may be empirical or normative. Empirical when they're based on what we actually see, when they're derived from what's observed, but it doesn't mean that they cannot be normative. No? So pwedeng ang panggalingan po ng normative theory or what we think should be, are those empirical studies that have been conducted. But theories can also be normative. No? In other words, they impart ideas about how the world should be. No? So empirical theories, in short, are those that tell us this is what it is right now. But normative theories are those that tell us what one thinks should be, how the world should be. No? So here, these are the points that I would like to briefly touch on: the state and the international system. What do all these theories say about the international system, and how is the present world order characterized? So when I say state and the international system, there might be an idea that might lead others to think, some rather not to think, that the focus is only on the state. Actually, hindi naman po. No? There are different theories that also point out the role of other actors. No? And by the way, by theory here, or by saying theory, we mean propositions about how things work. No? They are by no means the explanations. No? They are not the explanations. But theories are actually constantly evolving. Okay? So in trying to explain the international system and the role of states and different actors in that international system, there are many theories. So there are many ways, or there are many propositions and many ways of understanding what is going on. Okay, so first let me go to traditional theories, the so-called traditional theories. And what I will discuss here in this part are by no means exhaustive, no? Because in the interest of time, almost more than 10 minutes na pala ako, no? And I have many other things to discuss. But in the interest of time, I would like to highlight just a few of these theories. No? I will not be able to mention all. No? As I said, this is not an exhaustive list. But among the traditional theories in international relations, we have liberalism and realism. So I'm only going to go over these theories very quickly. No? So in teaching this part of the course, the discussion can indeed be heavily theoretical. So it would be good to give examples of how the theories can be seen in what is happening around the world, or how the theories are applied. So we can ask the students to look for specific examples themselves, no? Or we can provide the examples for them and have them apply the theories. So for example, there is a case or there is a situation, an event, like right now, no, the Ukraine-Russia war. We can assign that, no, as one of their assignments, no, because as a teacher po, I believe that students are able to learn more, no, when we allow them to discuss, especially in a mode, no, that we are in right now, in distance mode, remote mode, or online mode. No? We would like to provide the guides to our students on how they can understand the theories. Okay, so the first theory, of course, is liberalism. Perhaps this is well, what you have on the screen are two of the oldest ones. Liberalism, also called idealism, kasi meron ng neoliberalism ngayon, and realism. Okay? So very quickly, liberalism has been called or referred to as the utopian theory. Why? Because its proponents view human beings as innately good, and they believe in peace and harmony between nations. And that this is not only achievable but desirable. So, ang aking keyword dito, world peace, no? That it is desirable and attainable, very achievable. That's why, okay, I highlight here, no, the thinker Immanuel Kant gave this statement: liberal states do not go to war with each other. So this is the belief, no, in this theory. The more liberal a state is, the more it will advance peace. Okay, that's why it led to the creation of the first association of nations called the League of Nations. So you will remember this in your perhaps in your IR lesson, no, in your world politics or global politics lesson. All right. So liberalism, of course, as I mentioned earlier, has already acquired, no, a perspective, no, a more updated perspective. So now it's known as neoliberalism. Okay, the second one is realism, and this one now, in short, looks at the international system as an anarchy of states, meaning it is orderless. No? So kung utopian yung isa, meaning there could be harmony and peace in the international system, ito naman sa realism, ang belief is that states work for their own interest. And what is very important here is to remind our students, if they took it in their other GE courses, no, yung ideas ni Thomas Hobbes about the state of nature. So in Hobbes, okay, he described the state of nature as, this was a statement that was also mentioned earlier, no, poor, nasty, brute, solitary, brutish, and short. No, so labo-labo, anarchic, because in other words, equal naman talaga yung lahat, no? All individuals, and in this case, all states have the power to pursue its benefit, no? So there is thus no state that would carry out something to benefit another, but all a state does is really to pursue its own interests. That's why it's an anarchy of states, no? But Hans Morgenthau, one of the leading thinkers, no, in this theoretical perspective, wrote about all politics being a struggle for power. All politics is a struggle for power. So that's realism for you. No? So there is, instead of cooperation, this is for liberalism, yung harmony, yung peace can be achieved through the cooperation of states. For realists, it's the domination, no, of states over others, no? That is the primary idea. Okay, so these are two of the traditional theories in looking at global politics and international relations. Okay, next we have what are called the middle ground theories, and for this I will only focus on constructivism. No? So those of you who probably took up international relations or are in their graduate courses in international studies or international relations would remember this. No? So constructivism is a middle ground because it is in between mainstream theories and critical theories. So critical theories would be the third group of theories that I will discuss. So under constructivism, the importance of values and shared interests between individuals who interact on the global stage is highlighted. No? So the importance again of values and shared interests. That's why constructivists look at the spread of norms. No? among international actors. So if in the first set of theories, in the traditional theories, the states are the important actors, they seem to be the highlight, no, of those theories. In other words, lahat nakasalalay sa state, no? Yung cooperation, even yung dominance, no? Yung ganong klaseng mga decisions, no? Sa states lahat yon, no? And and seemingly all the other actors are silent, no? O wala silang role. Pero sa constructivism, not necessarily that, no? So here we can see in constructivist analysis, for example, the role of other international institutions. Okay, so a leading thinker in this middle ground theory, perhaps you are very familiar with the name Alexander Wendt. No? He described the relationship between agents or the individuals and structures the state as one in which structures not only constrain agents but also construct their identities and interests. No? So therefore, this is from Wendt. Anarchy is what states make of it. So, but here we can see that agents, no, are already looked at. Okay, so the essence of international relations, therefore, exists in the interactions between people. Okay, so that's a middle ground theory. Finally, we have the critical theories. And I guess this is where we can classify the analysis. No? The use of critical theory was applied earlier in the discussion of Prof. Guillermo. Now, why are they called critical theories? So marami din po ito, no? But I will only highlight Marxism and post-colonialism. Pero kasali rin dito feminism, no? And post-structuralism and other ideas. So critical theories oppose commonly held assumptions in the field of international relations that have been central since its establishment. No? So two examples are, number one, Marxism. Okay, so you can perhaps review, no, how Marxism looks at the world. No? So there is inequality among states because of the dominance of capitalism. So of course, the main obvious the main influence in Marxist theory are the ideas of Marx. No? So people around the globe, according to Marxism, are divided and alienated, and they do not recognize their commonality as proletariat. So sino ang kontrabida? No, ang kontrabida yung capitalism. No, that's why it cannot be achieved. And states pursue their interests for the interests of the capitalists, no, because of the pursuit of that particular interest. So if they pursue power, it is for economic power more than anything else. So that's the Marxist perspective. So what I'm saying here is that we can help our students make sense of the issues, no? So if there are people looking at certain issue, like for example in the lecture earlier, no, in the use of the terms Global South, no? Pwedeng i-apply yung critical theories, actually pwede din yung constructivism. So, pwede natin pong tulungan yung mga estudyante natin to use the theories to be able to understand better, no, these things. Okay, and then next is post-colonialism. So I put post-colonialism here just to show, no, that there are different perspectives within critical theories. Okay. And these are ideas that can be applied in terms of looking at other phenomena that exist in our contemporary world. No, looking at, for example, the Philippines in the context of the world. No, its relationship with its neighbors and the rest of the world. So post-colonialism, colonialism focuses on. The focus rather is on the inequality between nations, not necessarily because of capitalism, but because of what was mentioned earlier, colonialism. No? So, yung idea po na from the very beginning, parang talo na tayo kasi meron ng mga naagaw sa atin, ano, sa simula pa lang. And yeah, many other things, no. I will stick to my script so that I don't take so much time, no? I plan to end on time for more time for Q&A. Okay, so the exploitation, is more than the economic, more than just the economic aspect. So after learning these theories, then traditional theories, middle ground theories, and critical theories, the question is, how is globalization seen in terms of these theories? Okay, so probably that's where you can take off. So I suggest you draw a plan on how you can discuss this with your classes. Okay, so let us go now to what I mentioned, the concepts that are in the course syllabus that need to be discussed with the students and that need to be understood and also critically analyzed. So ano ba talagang nangyayari? What is this global governance? So bearing in mind the theories, we can discuss now how the concept of global governance is seen to be aligned to the theory that one takes. So for example, pwede po sigurong isang exercise, isang grupo, mamimili ng isang theory, tapos i-apply in terms of looking at global governance. So sa slide po na ito, I put the logo of the United Nations kasi parang sa tingin ko yan yung pinaka symbol ng global governance. Kung hinahanap natin ano ba yung simbolo ng global governance ngayon, or ano yung unang naiisip natin kapag pinag-usapan yung global governance. So this is a definition. Sorry, ang daming text pero ang haba kasi ng definition. Dito I got it from Andrew Haywood's Politics. Okay, ginagamit po namin to sa introductory course in political science. So here, I just want to highlight some points in this definition. Global governance refers to a broad, dynamic, and complex process of interactive decision-making at the global level, involving formal and informal mechanisms, as well as governmental and non-governmental bodies. So global governance is characterized by polycentrism, or different institutional frameworks and decision-making mechanisms operate in different issue areas, and intergovernmentalism, which means states and national governments retain considerable influence within the global governance system, and mixed actor involvement. So the public-private divide is blurred through the involvement of NGOs, transnational corporations, so TNCs, and the like. Okay, so I just highlighted this definition of global governance to provide some ideas on how it can be discussed. But in terms of discussing an example or a specific case of global governance, and this can be a topic na malaki na maraming pwedeng i-discuss. So we can discuss some examples. Okay, and the example that I chose obviously is the United Nations. So the United Nations, of course, does not possess complete power over states. That's why this is problematic. So we can provide this context. What are the purposes? So these are from the United Nations website itself. So to mediate diplomatically when conflicts between states arise, to maintain peace and security, promote sustainable development, protect human rights, uphold international law, and deliver humanitarian aid around the world. So ito parang basic knowledge of the United Nations. And then you can also probably discuss some ideas about the UN agencies. But in discussing this, I think my suggestion is not to discuss one by one, but maybe you can focus on the following question: what is the United Nations and what is its main work? What are examples that students can give about the impact of the United Nations on societies? So you can ask your students to draw from their own experiences. Meron bang impact sa kanila yan? For example, for an icebreaker activity, ayun, ito lang yung naisip ko. Bago nyo pag-usapan yung United Nations, baka gusto niyo, if you are conducting the discussion synchronously via Zoom or any other platform, you can probably give a simple trivia quiz. You can also use the annotate function in Zoom to have the students type their answers on the screen. So yung answers nila will be shown on the screen. You can have one question like, what does the United Nations mean for you? Or maybe kung trivia lang, anong naalala mo sa celebration ng United Nations nung nasa elementary school ka? Kasi 'di ba, parang common experience. Ginagawa pa naman rin siguro ng mga bata yan ngayon, yung nagsusuot sila ng iba't ibang mga costumes ng national costumes ng iba't ibang mga bansa, So well, that's an icebreaker, before you discuss the United Nations, and then you can discuss now the work of the United Nations. So that's it really fulfill, its functions. You can go back to the theories, because indeed there are many articles, that you can ask students to read, also that you can assign students to read, that criticize the work of the United Nations, basically even the very idea of global governance. Is it even possible given that states promote their own interests, amongst themselves? So that's one, the United Nations. And then another concept that I found in the syllabus is regionalism. So this one is very interesting naman, well, I chose this one. I downloaded, I think, from the ASEAN website. So this is the flag of ASEAN and the flags of the member states. Okay. Kompleto naman, na 10. So we can take the opportunity to also discuss ASEAN, as a form of regionalism, because this is again another phenomenon that is present in our contemporary world. So bakit may ASEAN? Kailan ba yan tinatag, And here, what is regionalism? Bakit meron yan, And perhaps this is where you can discuss, after first discussing in class what it is, or how it has been defined as the expression of the shared identity and purpose of nations, it is, or some define it, regionalism, as a process through which larger geographical areas emerge as political organizations. So you can take the opportunity to discuss now bodies like ASEAN and EU. Medyo partial ako sa ASEAN dito kasi bilang member ang country natin, ng ASEAN. You can also discuss different modes of regionalism, such as economic, political, and security modes of regionalism. But again, because this is a big topic, again, you can choose what to focus on. That's why in terms of discussing ASEAN, I just remembered that one of my students in a course I'm teaching this semester, International Studies 299, it's a research methods course. His proposed topic for research, which of course I had heavily commented on, is the idea of the question of an ASEAN identity. Because the question there is, does it really exist? So kung sa mga Pilipino nga, medyo problematic pa tayo sa ating Filipino identity. What about the ASEAN identity? And I think one of the important lessons that we can discuss with or topics that we can discuss with our students is precisely ASEAN. What is this intergovernmental body? Ano bang history niyan? Bakit siya itinatag? At anong ginagawa nila sa kasalukuyan? Kasi halimbawa ngayon, merong pillars, yung ASEAN na tinatawag, the establishment, well, in 2020 supposedly, yung ASEAN Vision 2020, na meron ng ASEAN Community Vision 2025, and meron na rin yatang version na 2030, so why, what is the rationale for that, for having that those initiatives among the 10 member states? And of course, most importantly, is the politics. Like for example, while discussing this with well, I only have one person with me in the house, my husband. While discussing this topic with him, he suggested or he raised the question, is it even politically significant, no, yung ASEAN? No, because what are the contributions in terms of the attainment of peace and political stability in countries that are beleaguered, no? So for example, right now, Myanmar, no, or gano'n, no, in the past, no, when there were issues in Cambodia, no, what has ASEAN done? So in other words, also the assessment, no, of the process of regionalism that is closer, no, closer to home. Ano bang impact ng ASEAN sa buhay ng Pilipino, halimbawa, no? Okay, maybe they can also draw from their own experiences. Did they study ASEAN or issues in their high school, no, or in other courses? Okay, so these are just some ideas. Okay, finally, the last one, okay, which is my favorite because my research interest is in environmental politics, no, is sustainable development. Okay, so the next slide actually shows the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. No? So this can be, I'll come back to the previous slide later on. So this is another concept that can be covered by the course, but why is it important to discuss this? No? And again, I think, no, it is very important to give the history. No? Ano ba tong sustainable development? Ito again, no, taking off from what was discussed earlier, no, about the term Global South, no, yung sustainable development. Nag-emerge to ng mga 1980s, no? In fact, wala pang UN Conference on Environment and Development prior to the 1980s. The very first one happened in 1987. So there was a World Conference on Environment and Development and a World Commission on Environment and Development that coined the term sustainable development. So since then, it had been used by the United Nations in terms of pursuing environmental policies for encouraging, no, states to develop environmental policies that will promote sustainable development in their countries and in the region. No? So when we talk about the concept of sustainable development, no, the spread of this particular value, no, of valuing environmental protection is another perspective that you can discuss with your students. So right now, when we talk about environmental issues, we also, of course, discuss climate change. No? So why is climate change even a global issue? No? But of course, our students should be able to understand that ito cliche na, pero napakatotoo naman po talaga that environmental issues recognize no boundaries. Pagka merong isang lugar, no, geographic area na naapektuhan, damay-damay na. And ganun po ang climate change. No? So I think that there are subjects in the senior high school that also discuss the importance of paying attention to climate change issues and what is the world doing. No? So the role of governments and civil society actors in addressing climate change. No? Sa kasalukuyan, merong UN framework on climate change. So since 1992, there is an annual meeting of representatives of states, and there is a parallel meeting of civil society actors, no, environmental groups, and also those that are not necessarily environmental groups, but that care for the sustainable development goals. They participate in what are now more popularly known as the COP. No? So last November 2021, the 26th COP, this is the Conference of Parties, parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, yung nabanggit ko kanina, UNFCCC. The parties to that meet annually, and these parties, meaning states, no, they committed to what they would like to achieve. No, these are called their NDCs, nationally determined commitments. So they supposedly commitment po sila. Kaya lang yun nga, well, one of the criticisms is that puro meetings, no? Puro pag-uusap. Okay, that's why I think understanding and appreciating the role of each individual citizen in protecting the environment is very important. So that's why we can go to the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay. Sorry. Na-curious lang po ako sa chat. So that will lead us to look into the 17. I will not discuss the 17 goals kasi wala po akong oras, no? So, and I also don't want to bore you with this, but my suggestion is you go over this with your classes and choose probably ano bang favorite nila, no? So, are they focused on education? Number 4 is SDG 4 is on quality education. Actually, environmental education is also part of SDG 4. Okay, if their concern is responsible consumption and production, so they can focus on SDG 12, or peace, justice, and strong institutions, SDG 16. So, and there are many materials on this that you can find in the internet. Okay, so finally, I go to some thoughts on teaching strategies that hopefully kapupulutan po ninyo ng konting idea, hopefully, sa pagtuturo po ninyo ng the contemporary world. Una is to clarify the concepts. No? Importante po na nagsisimula tayo dyan. But I understand that this can be very challenging. No? Kasi ang hirap din naman talaga para sa mga estudyante yung hindi naman nila major. Ito, na-experience namin to sa mga GE courses namin dito sa UP. Siyempre, parang low priority sa kanila yung GE course. Pero dito po pumapasok yung role natin na ipapaliwanag natin dapat sa kanila bakit nila kailangan maintindihan ito. And again, katulad po na nabanggit ko kanina, it's very important to help them clarify the concepts. Kasi mahirap po pag hindi nagkakaintindihan, no? Tungkol dito. Secondly is to help students recognize the different perspectives. So for me, it is very important to discuss the different theories. What are the different perspectives here? No? And then to engage them in the discussion of the issues. And you can probably think of different strategies. Right now, of course, we are encouraged to think of various strategies to help our students. No, not just listen to the lectures, not just view lectures. Kasi narinig ko yun, no, yung sa isang kaibigan ko na parent, sabi niya, nagrereklamo yung anak niya kasi puro panood ng mga videos. No? Thank God hindi po UP yun. So, I think importante na, syempre kung di maiwasan, kailangan din natin mag-assign na manood sila ng mga lectures, no? Pero maganda din po na siguro yung meron tayong interaction sa kanila. And then we also encourage our students to be updated in global and regional issues. So, since this course is really about the Philippines in the contemporary world, no? So we have to help them understand what is going on in that contemporary in that arena, no? In the what is the place of the Philippines in our contemporary world right now. And finally, to provide them with educational resources, no? Internet resources, syempre yung mga free. So in UP, we are encouraged, and I think CHED also encourages the use of open educational resources. So finally, for my last slide, well, my very last slide is, thank you slide. But these references, okay, are free to download in the internet. Yung pong una, yung Understanding Global Politics. Well, this is specifically for the discussion of the theories, no? And then ano po ito, this is free to download. You can find them in the internet. I can also share the PDF files of this. This is in the common, ano ba yung tawag doon? Yung, sorry. aging process, nakalimutan ko. Pero I can share the PDF, no? So these are common sources, parang shared by the authors. They were shared by the authors for free. The only restriction is you cannot sell them, so you can share with them. For the second book, you can download the entire book if you want, but this is just for chapter 4. There's also another chapter that provides the historical context for the ideas, so you can also download it. No? So finally, the third one, this is not free, but maybe you can ask your librarians to buy it. Merong soft copy, no? Medyo mahal nga lang siya if you will buy it for your individual use, but it's a very good book that we use for introductory course in politics that also has global politics, no, chapters, no, on global politics and on the concept. So this is Haywood's Politics. We've been using this for more than 20 years, no, nasa 5th edition na siya. If you, yeah, it has online resources for teachers and students, and it makes from the author, so it makes the teaching a little bit easier. But if you are constrained by resources, you can go for number 1 and number 2. And there are many websites available in the internet that provide, especially now, no, for teachers who are doing teaching in online mode or remote mode, distance mode, blended mode, however we call it, no? So marami po tayong makikita niyan in the internet. So you can choose what you would like to use. So finally, again, I would like to thank everybody for the time to listen, and congratulations for being here, and I look forward to the Q&A. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much po, Ma'am Ruth, for that very informative lecture on basically how we can teach, no, the contemporary world as a GE course. No? But before we move on to the exciting part of our lecture for this morning, which is basically the open forum, let's have first a very quick break. I think the organizers have a short video that they will be presenting to us. Yeah.
Simpleng ehersisyo sa palaupong pamumuhay o sedentary lifestyle. Sabi nga nila, sitting is the new smoking, at ang pag-upo ng matagal ay nakakasama sa kalusugan. Sundin ang mga sumusunod. Ehersisyo sa leeg at balikat. Ehersisyo sa kamay. Ehersisyo sa likod at legs. Ugaliing gawin itong mga ehersisyo kada 1 oras ng pagkakaupo. Ehersisyo sa leeg at balikat. Ehersisyo sa kamay. Ehersisyo sa likod at legs. Isang paalala mula sa OSHC.
Ayan. Thank you so much for that very timely tips, no, on how we can survive, basically work from home. Now we've come to the exciting part of this morning's lecture, which is the Q&A. And we have already gathered many questions, no, that we can discuss in the open forum. So if I may, no, I will proceed to the first question. And this question is about the teaching innovations naman that can be applied to basically the GE course of contemporary world. And Roel Rojas has asked in Zoom chat, no, is the criteria and or definition of global north continuously upgrading that slow economic progress of global south cannot cope with it? No? Is it utopia to achieve a global sense of economic justice or equity? So I guess Sir Bowman could probably take this question. Sir Bowman, were you able to get that, or you want me to repeat it, sir? Sir? Wala atang audio si Sir Bowman.
Hello, hello, hello.
Ay, sir. Ayan, I can hear you na, sir.
Ang baterya yung aking
It's okay, sir.
So I sort of got that question, no? Pero baka makatulong si Ma'am Ruth din na sagutin yung katanungan na yon, ano? At siguro yung panghuli, yung huling bahagi ng tanong. Sorry, there's some noise also coming from my machine.
That's fine, sir.
Yung usapin ng is it utopian? I think doon sa discussion ni Ma'am Ruth, meron siyang discussion nga tungkol doon sa meron ding insofar as we can hope, ano, for a supposed a better world, ano, there can be some kind of utopian ideas. Siguro ang issue sa utopianism is parang inherent doon sa sense na sinasabi natin utopian, impossible. Ano? In any case, meron siguro matatawag tayong may isang philosopher, may concept siya, the concrete utopia. Meron pang abstract utopia. No? Yung abstract utopia, yung mga panaginip lang natin, kung ano yung mga parang yung mga bagay na hindi naman talaga mangyayari. Pero yung konkretong utopia, nakabata yan sa mga posibilidad ng ating sitwasyon. At kung nais natin halimbawa, nabanggit ni Mamu kanina yung mga problema ng environment, no? In that case, I think international or global cooperation, if not governance, in terms of thinking at such a problem, for example, is not only possible, it is necessary. Ano? Kung sa usapin ng kung matutugunan ba natin ang problema na yan. So, ang kailangan natin is to create the conditions of possibility for achieving those kinds of global governance which we need. Kaya we have to look at our conditions, and we'll have to look at states, also non-state actors, social movements, non-government organizations na nagtutulak ng mga pagbabago sa kalakaran, hindi lamang sa pambansa kundi sa pandaigdigang antas. So, if we're going to go back to that utopian idea, let's think of concrete utopias, utopias that can be made possible, that are rooted in the needs and the conditions that are available to us at a particular moment. So, ngayon ang isang parang napansin ko rin doon sa mga tanong. Ang gusto ba ng Global South ay maging katulad ng Global North? 'Di ba? Kumbaga, yung is the Global North a mirror image of what the Global South wants to become? I think yung mga proponents ay kasi yung essence kasi ng Global South as a category, it's a kind of critical category, inherently, So ang sense of the Global South, isn't there another way, to achieve the rights and welfare of our peoples without necessarily going through the same development path, na ipinakita ng West? Kumbaga, ang ating kapalaran na lang ba ay ulitin yung landas na tinahak ng kanluran tungo sa pag-unlad na may sarili niyang mga problema, may sariling mga mapangwasak na katangian, mapangdigma na katangian, mapagsamantalang katangian. Yun ba yung, kumbaga, yun ba yung direksyon na kailangan nating tignan bilang development? From the beginning, even with the idea of third world, they were already looking for alternative development paradigms. And I think it's important that, this global south and the third world, we're the majority of the planet. So if we're the majority of the planet, then we should be able to formulate a development strategy that is our own making, na naisip natin sa ating sarili, na dinevelop natin mula sa ating mga pangangailangan at mula sa ating karanasan. Hindi yung isipin natin, alam nyo, sabihin ko, yung kapalaran natin na ulitin na lamang ang ginawa ng Europa. Yung kapalaran natin na ulitin na lamang ang ginawa ng mga Amerikano. Why do we have brains? We have the majority of brains on this planet. We can think up of a new development path. That is not the same as what they went through. Pero naghahangad pa rin ng parehong pag-unlad, parehong pagsulong, parehong pagpapalawak ng karapatang pantao, kaginawahan para sa nakararami. Nung iniisip nila, kahit sino Jose Rizal, nung sabi nila, ay, tapos na tayo dito sa mga Europeo na to. Umiwalag na tayo sa mga Europeo. Sinabi nila, yung thinking ba ni Rizal, kaya gayahin na lang natin yung mga Europeo. Let's do the stuff that they did. No, they didn't think that. No? Sabi nila, let's think of something else. Let's develop our own history, our own direction. Kaya nakakalungkot naman kung ang layunin lang ng Global South ay kopyahin yung Global North. Kumbaga tayo ay Xerox guys lang, Eternally we are just copying their intellectual products, I mean, kaya may magandang concept din dito na decolonization, na doon sa decolonization, hindi lang yan usapin ng economics, hindi lang yan usapin ng culture, that's also intellectual decolonization. We should think for ourselves, establish new directions in thinking, because after all, we are the majority of brains on this planet. Huwag natin isipin na yun, naisip na nila yan. Gayahin na lang natin. Kopyahin na lang natin yung mga ginawa nila. Tingin ko ay ang ating kapalaran, ang ating kaligtasan ay nasa sa ating sariling kamay at pag-iisip. So we have to develop this extremely independent path of thinking. We're in the 21st century. We'll go to the 22nd century. And I think this is our challenge, to develop this concrete utopia, which is our own making, which is our own thinking, that goes beyond the limits set for us by the current global north. So sa simple lang, hindi siguro layunin ng Global South yung ilang formulations ito just to copy the global north, just to become like them. No, we want to develop something else siguro, Pero pag-uusapan yan sa isang demokratikong pamamaraan, di ba? Yun naman ang katangiang mapagpalaya ng ganitong nosyon ng Global South.
Thank you, Sir Bowman. I'll proceed to the next question for the purposes now we can accommodate at least most of the questions that were given to us. So the second is in terms of basically yung content naman po ng contemporary world na course. The question first is, how deep and wide should we go in terms of discussions of the concept in contemporary world? So how deep and wide should we go? And second, what final assessments can be suggested that we can use to benchmark our students in this course? And I believe siguro si Ma'am Ruth can start with those two questions, Ma'am.
Yeah, thank you for the questions.
Nakapulat kaming dalawa ni Ma'am Ruth.
Hindi po kami nag-usap. Color coordinated tayo. Salamat po dun sa tanong. As I kept on mentioning earlier po, talagang very challenging yung course. In fact, nung first time ko siya na nakita yung course syllabus, sabi ko, wow, loaded. But as I mentioned earlier, it's a very important course po because I think si Prof. Bowman mentioned na bakit to importante? Kasi yung yun nga po, no, yung landas na tatahakin ng bansa natin really depends on the people who we are teaching, no. So anyway, to go to the question, ano yung depth, kasi nga malawak, no. Ang suggestion ko, ang recommendation ko is to begin with the perspectives on how we can make sense of what is going on. Ang purpose po natin dito ay ilahad lang sa mga estudyante natin na ito yung mga perspectives na meron ang iba't ibang mga tao. Kaya nga nilahad ko po yung theoretical background, no, na yung mga theories, no, on that can be used to understand how states relate with one another. For example po sa usapin ng environment, syempre diyan kitang-kita natalo yung mga tinatawag na Global South kasi supposedly yun nga no, talo na kaagad sa simula pa lang kasi plundered na yung mga bansa, no. For example, the former colonies at saka yung mga companies na accountable, no, sa mga climate change impact ng mga companies na yon, no. Like for example, in the Philippines, mining, for example, no, had been really very destructive over the years, over decades, no. Pero so according to yung mga pag-uusap, no, sa ng Conference of Parties sa climate change, merong responsibility yung Global North, yung mayayaman na bansa. But then I read earlier in a comment, no, parang wala namang ngipin itong ano na to. Yun nga po, yun nga po yung problema natin. So it really depends on the people, no. So my ideas are for for civil society actors to come together to really push the agenda, advocate at the national level, at the international level, no, kung ano po yung magagawa natin, and also be in solidarity with other Global South countries on this, no. So kung sa style na yon, no, kasi kung ako yung magtuturo ng the contemporary world, pipili ako ng favorite ko na issue, no, para yung theories naka-apply doon sa issue na yon. And then finally, yung question about the assessment, paano natin ma-assess na yung mga learning outcomes na binanggit kanina yun nandun sa syllabus, makikita na natin yun sa mga estudyante natin. Well, there are many activities that you can make them do. Like for example, tingin ko dito sa kurso na to, hindi masyadong nagmamatter yung exam. Baka yung understanding lang nung theories yung kailangan i-test doon. So i-assess kung naintindihan ba yung mga konsepto. Pwede yon sa quiz probably, no, sa mga simpleng assessment, kahit sa discussion pwede kayong mag-assess. Kung gusto niyo graded assessment, pwedeng short essays, and then for a final assessment pwedeng paper, no, kung saan makikita na ninyo yung assessment nung understanding, no, ng knowledge ng estudyante tungkol doon sa main concept ng kurso. So siguro po yun yung pwede kong ma-share sa inyo.
Thank you, Ma'am Ruth. Sir Bowman, would you like to chime in or any additions?
Hindi, gusto kong tanungin kay Ma'am Ruth, ano ba yung global citizenship? Paano mo nakikita yon? Anong papati mo? Kasi may na problema na nga tayo sa Pilipinas kung ano yung citizenship, di ba? Paano kaya global pa, di ba?
Opo, kaya well people talk about global citizenship kasi nga daw po ngayon through the internet we are connected, and we can easily communicate, and then we are exposed to different ideas, no. Pero I think po kasi yung citizenship yun nga, kung legal ang definition, yung citizenship natin nakabatay doon sa kung saan tayo pinanganak, ano, kasi yun yung batas natin, no? So yung national citizenship. Pero kung identity, ibang usapan pa siya, di ba po? Dahil iba naman yung pag-form ng identity. So kung issues ang pinag-uusapan, di dapat maka-identify, ang mabubuo sa mga estudyante muna natin, ma-identify ano ba yung mga issues natin dito sa Pilipinas. To help them, I think our role is to really help them understand this, make sense of what is going on. At maging grounded din sila dun sa mga issues natin dito sa ating bansa, and equip them with the proper tools and skills. For example, yun pong pagkakaroon ng critical thinking, yung development nun, syempre hindi po yun magagawa ng isang kurso lang. Dahil napaka-ambisyoso naman yata, baka yun yung utopia. Na yung course lang na contemporary world ang magbibigay nun sa kanila. Pero bilang mga guro, sa tingin ko po ay doon tayo pwedeng makabahagi, makapagbigay ng bahagi.
Bilang dagdag lang doon ay yun nga, yung problema kasi, halimbawa yung ating, nabanggit nga ni Ma'am Ruth na, kasi pwedeng magkaroon tayo ng, actually sa ASEAN, ganun din yung kanilang thinking. Yung ASEAN citizenship, it starts with culture. Kaya ano ba yung ASEAN culture pinag-aaralan ngayon, Kahit sa European Union, mahalaga yung pagbubuo daw ng tinatawag na EU citizenship na nakabatay sa cultural linguistic commonalities ng mga tao doon. Gayunpaman, yun nga, napakahirap isipin ng citizenship na walang basis, for example, in the law or in the legal structures of nation states. For example, yung mga OFW natin, pagkalabas ng bansa, agad-agad hindi sila mamamayan ng bansa na yon. At sa gayon ay wala silang mga karapatan na mayroon yung mga bansa na yon. At minsan pa nga, dahil nga sila yung mga dayuhan, ay hindi sila nabibigyan ng buong karapatan bilang mga tao, kahit doon sa mga na lugar na kung saan sila napadpad. Kaya yung proteksyon ng pagkamamamayan ay naipagkakait sa kanila dahil lamang hindi sila isinilang doon sa bansa na yun o nagkaroon ng pagkamamamayan doon. Kaya sabihin man natin na may pangkultura silang pagkamdamdamin ng global na pagiging mamamayan, yung hard reality sometimes of facing, being a migrant worker, being a refugee, being an exile in other countries, shows you that yung condition natin hindi kinikilala yung ating buong karapatan bilang mga tao dahil nga hindi tayo mamamayan. Kaya nga ang hirap isipin nung global citizenship without a corresponding idea rin of global governance na nabanggit nga ni Ma'am Ruth kanina, that there should be some global institution that tries to enforce and implement the rights of people, in general on a global scale, na hindi na ipagkakait ang ating mga karapatan na api tayo dahil lamang dayuhan tayo sa isang bansa, yung mga anak na nasa bansa roon pwedeng magkaroon ng edukasyon, pwedeng magkaroon ng libreng serbisyong pangkalusugan. Pero pag Pilipino ka, yung mga anak mo, hindi bibigyan ng ganung mga libreng edukasyon o libreng pangkalusugan kahit nag-aambag ka rin sa ekonomiya ng bansa na yon dahil lamang kayo ay mga dayuhan. Kaya it's so hard to sometimes think of it, kung paliwanag mo sa mga bata na ganyan. Pero yung hard reality is something quite different.
I agree, Sir Bowman. I think kasi yung global citizenship as a term in itself, medyo mapandil lang siya kasi parang it promises, for instance, automatic respect for universal human rights, where in fact, realities on the ground show na ultimately, parang yung discussion natin kanina on the global south, it's still the dominant narratives and discourses of those in power. So, pero I'd like to double down on what was mentioned kanina by Professor Dosterio Rico, which is basically, I think it's important to emphasize na it's not needed for us, I think, to discuss everything about contemporary world. I think it's a very useful tip that we should zone in on one particular issue or topic, and we simply focus on that. And I want to emphasize that kasi there's another question here na or comment rather, that many parents are actually asking about the full scale of these GE courses, and knowing that these are just a little of everything, so we cannot really have a complete mastery of contemporary world as it is. And if I may add, sa assessment naman po, At least from my experience, what has been very effective is yung, kasi these are, younger kids, no, more technologically savvy, if I may say so. Yung mga 1-minute short videos where they can be creative about, say, the discussion of certain issues on contemporary world. So doon na papasok lahat yun, yung discussion. You can already assess how they appreciate yung pinag-usapan natin in the course, no? So just a short TikTok or 1 minute, 30-second video on a chosen topic, no? So yeah, those are just some of my thoughts on the discussions we're having so far. Let me proceed to another question, or if our presenters, may gusto ba kayong idagdag or comments? If none po, I'll proceed with a question that is quite striking, and I think it has to do with global governance. No? So UN Tribunal made it known to the world that the Philippines has the legal right over the West Philippine Sea. Now the question is, according to this audience, no, what is the use of UN if it cannot legally enforce its decision? Parang batas na walang ngipin. Tanong din kasi ito ng maraming students. How should we answer or approach this question? And this is also pakabit ng isa pang question on environment and climate naman po. Like, there are many conferences yearly, pero parang walang nangyayari daw. So what's the use of these institutions, no, in really making an orderly international system, if you will? So who would like to start?
Ako
Ma'am
muna.
Ruth? Sige.
Oo.
Yes, Ma'am Ruth.
Oo, briefly, para sa akin, kung na-observe na gano'n, no, parang walang namang nangyayari, well, at least the UN provides the platform. No, for example, yung nabanggit ko kanina, yung Conference of Parties, no, from 1992 kasi yung pinakauna na UN Conference on Environment and Development. Tapos na-coin nga yung Sustainable Development, nagkaroon ng Agenda 21 and so on, So the rest is history. Para sa akin yung importance noon is the provision of a platform for civil society groups. Kasi kung naghahanap po tayo ng napakalaking pagbabago na okay, eto na overnight, no? Parang hindi po talaga mangyayari 'yon. Pero kung mawawala naman tayo ng pag-asa dahil walang mangyayari, nakaasa lang tayo doon, 'di ba? Wala talagang mangyayari. What I'm saying is that the people also have to act, no? That's why I mentioned earlier that advocacy is very important, no? Just to continue, no, in our own little ways. For example, no, to make the Philippine government has made commitments, no, on with respect to that, no, yung sa climate change. Meron siyang napakababa nga lang, no, kasi much of yung total niya na NDC in terms of percentage mataas, pero doon sa commitment na yon nakadepende doon sa ibibigay na funds ng ibang bansa, no? So therefore it boils down to around less than 5% commitment ng national government ng Philippines. Okay, having said that, therefore what can the people do? Di pressure pa yung government, no? To act on its commitment. And okay, if it depends on partner institutions or governments, yung help, no? Kasi yun nga, wala naman tayo masyadong funds and all, I think that we should still pursue it. Okay, so there are so many problems in the contemporary world. Ang hirap naman na lahat hahanapan mo ng solution overnight, no? So I guess that what we can teach our students is to think of concrete ways on how it can be addressed. Okay, finally, just to share, for example, in teaching climate change and how they can appreciate, no, that it has an effect. Kasi ganun sa mga environmental issues, wala kang pakialam kapag hindi ka naapektuhan, no? Lalong-lalo na kung malayo yan, tingin mo malayo sa'yo. Pero if you just lead your students, no, to understand, for example, nagkaroon ng ilang bang bagyo nagkaroon sa Pilipinas, no? Sino yung mga naapektuhan, anong nangyari, no? So nagpulan tayo sa food and so on. So yung mga exercises na yan, hopefully will lead our students to think about the situation of the country. It's not really just us kasi tayo as individuals, meron tayong kanya-kanyang part. We cannot do everything. So for me, this is how I think about it. If my role as a teacher is to contribute in terms of molding these minds, edi doon ako magfo-focus. But it doesn't mean to say that I don't volunteer in other things. Because extra time, I can do volunteer work. So parang ganun po yung idea.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir Bowman, would you like to chime in on that discussion po?
Pandagdag na lamang doon sa usapin ng West Philippine Sea, ano? Yun nga, mukhang kung titingnan natin, siguro mukhang walang epekto yung UN, ano, siguro sa panandaliang pagtingin. Pero sa UN ay nagkakaroon ng, parang inuulit ko lang yung sagot ni Ma'am Ruth, pero siguro may konti na akong dagdag, no, na nagkakaroon ng pagkakataon para magkaugnay ang mga nation state, pag-usapan yung particular na problema na, halimbawa doon, yung 9-dash line ng China, for example, hindi lang ang Pilipinas na may problema dyan. Marami tayong mga kapitbayan na pareho ang problema doon sa 9-dash line. Kaya sa Southeast Asia. Kaya yung mahalaga dito ay siguro maaaring ilabas nga sa UN ang ganyan mga usapin at sa iba pang mga international na mga multilateral organization. Pero ang isang mahalagang bagay ay magkaroon ng regional response. Dahil yung regional response sa ganyang let's say territorial infringement, no, ng China ay yung makapagpapalakas. Hindi Pilipinas lang kundi yung iba pang mga kasama natin sa Southeast Asia ay kinakailangang magkaroon tayo ng mga paraan para matugunan ito. Pero yung isang importante dito, dahil alam natin hindi agad din kumikilos yung mga pamunuan at mga estado na yan, yun nga, yung pagkilos ng mamamayan mismo ng mga bansa na mai-pressure ang kanilang mga gobyerno na gumawa ng mga hakbang. Kaya napaka-essential, napaka-importante ng pagkilos ng mga mamamayang Pilipino. Huwag tayong umasa na lamang doon sa ating mga nahalal na mga leader sa ngayon para kasi kumbaga responsibilidad ng presidente na ipagtanggol ang soberanya, lalo na teritorial na soberanya ng Pilipinas. Ano na 'yon? Tukulin niya 'yon, kaya hayaan mo siyang gawin 'yon. Mahirap na ganoon lang. Kung tayo isang aktibong mamamayan, meron tayong damdamin ng aktibong pagkamamamayan, lalahok tayo sa proseso na 'yan at gagawa tayo ng paraan para maitulak ang ating gobyerno at gayon din makipag-ugnay sa mga nasa ibang mga bansa rin sa ating area, sa rehiyon natin, na gumawa ng mga makabuluhang pagkilos dito. Kaya ang mahalaga yung on the ground, no? Although it's important, no? UN, because that's where you establish relationships, that's where you also establish linkages, no? Pero on the ground, it's so important to maintain some kind of force, kung ganyan ang usapin. I think para sa mga ordinaryong mamayan, hindi sobrang abstrakto ang usapin ng West Philippine Sea. Hindi ito, kung teritorial na integridad ng Pilipinas ang pag-uusapan, ang mga ordinaryong mamayan ay interesado dito. Hindi lang ito isang abstrakto at walang saysay na usapin para sa mga mamayang Pilipino. Lalo na kapag nakita nila yung mga mangingisdang Pilipino ay pinagbawal na mangisda, di ba? Sa isang panahon. Kaya isa itong importante. Yung Ma'am Ruth, yung problema sa environment, minsan parang burgis na issue no? Kahit gaano mo kaya paliwanag parang burgis, hindi may impact yan. May binabagyo, may binabaha, may mga, di ba? Maraming mga problema dinaranas ng ordinaryong mamayan sa climate change. Pero parang hindi pa natin parang it's sort of stuck in a middle class realm. And how do we do that? How do we yung climate citizenship, how do we really try to make it more popular, mas bagus sa mga mamayan?
Yeah, I agree, no? And I think what I'm getting po yung sense po from this particular question is really we need to emphasize to our students that these institutions, international organizations, international law, they are not meant to be a magic bullet, to answer all contemporary world problems. They can simply serve first, no, as an arena. And I think that is important, no, where we can, yun nga, interact with one another, make a collective stand or position on a particular issue. And for me, that is already a very useful start. No? Even in normalizing certain values and ideas, no? This is where these laws and institutions come in. Yeah. So thank you for those comments, Ma'am Ruth and Sir Bowman. Now, if I may proceed naman to a rather technical question with respect to the requirements naman po, no? So there's this participant who asked, and he made the point that the course is very heavy for the students, to the fact that the final output is a research paper, no? And it's okay to learn the research skills, definitely, but what are your suggestions in facilitating or mentoring the research writing of the students? So on research naman po. Ma'am Ruth, yes?
Oo. Dahil GE course lang tapos paper, no? Kaya babalikan ko lang yung suggestion ko na mag-focus lang dun sa isang issue. Maaring yung estudyante yung pumili nun, pero all throughout the course, kasi 1 semester niya yung gagawin, ano? I-develop niya na yung topic niya dun sa paper para hindi masyadong mabigat. Tapos pare-pareho sila. Yun nga lang, alam ko mabigat ito kapag maraming estudyante tapos lahat i-guide mo. Kasi po, kung research paper writing talaga ang focus, baka kailangan konti lang estudyante natin. Kaya lang alam ko na kapag isang GE class, ilan ba? Umaabot ng 40, di ba? Sa iba, yung estudyante nila. So, yun po ang suggestion ko. Balikan ko lang yung mag-focus sa isang issue pagkatapos all throughout the SEM, yun yung i-guide natin yung estudyante to develop that. First, identify a topic, develop an outline, parang magkaroon ng simple outline, no? So, ano bang output? Siguro 15 pages lang na paper, okay na. So, wag po masyadong ambisyoso. Ako kasi sa kurso na ganito, mas importante sa akin yung maintindihan ng mga estudyante yung relevance, no? Bakit kailangan aralin ito? Yun lang po.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir Bowman, any thoughts po on how to do research on a GE course?
Oo nga, yung problema kasi ay nakalagay doon sa syllabus na kumbaga halos may 1 linggo lang sila para magsulat doon sa dulo. So, talagang kung 1 linggo lang yan susulatin, with references, nakalagay pa ron, no? Ay, medyo gahol sa oras. Kaya, paano ba to? Hindi ko ganong maisip. No? Siguro, para sa akin ay, yung practical na isipin dyan ay parang hindi pa nga abot ng 15 pages yung kakayanin dyan, no? Pero, kung length lang, ano? I mean, that's just a purely quantitative aspect. Well, siguro yung aking isang thing na importante sa akin ay gawin yung research konektado sa kanilang buhay, no? Sa ordinaryong buhay nila. Ano, kung halimbawa ay may mga magulang na OFW, ano, na pwede nila ma-interview tungkol doon sa mga karanasan, ano, sa ano yung karanasan mo ng daigdig, ano? At iba pang mga pwedeng malapit sa kanilang karanasan. Kahit yung maganda nga yung kay Ma'am Ruth kanina, yung BTS. Of course. I mean, something that's very close to them, di ba? BTS, K-pop, K-drama, ano? Actually, talaga ano yan. Yung mahalaga lang ay yung makakuha ng kanilang interest at malapit sa kanila para hindi gaanong abstracto yung gagawin nila at meron silang konting momentum, no, para matapos yun. Kaya, BTS is basically a global phenomenon and it's a transnational phenomenon with a lot of impact on the youth. So, pwedeng pwedeng interesting topic, ano? So, agree ako doon. So, yun lang naman. Pero agree, hindi natin minimize yung challenge. It's really challenging. Dahil nga, maraming estudyante, tapos halos 1 linggo lang yung kanilang panahon para magsulat. So, yung talino, husay at galing ng ating guro ay papasok dyan.
Right. Yeah. And I think based from your comments po, I think it has to be recognized that yung research paper as a final output specifically for a GE course is quite a high ask, if I may say so, no? And I think dito papasok yung usefulness nung, halimbawa, nung pinresent na 5 competencies na highlight ni Ma'am Ruth for the contemporary world, kasi that sets the agenda and the expectations, no? Sa GE course namin on social science too, we're lucky to have itong learning outcomes na hina-highlight and ina-emphasize talaga namin to our students. And from there, we actually create yung suitable assessment, no? And as Ma'am Ruth and Sir Bowman has emphasized, mas importante talaga yung ma-capture kung paano naintindihan ng students yung concepts, no, or mga theories na inintroduce in this GE course, no. And probably other assessment tools can be useful, no, in measuring that, no. For pasensya na ho, medyo naubusan na ho tayo ng oras, so I'll proceed with my last question, and this is very apt as a last question, no, and I think a common challenge for everyone, no, as educators, no. How do you think are GE courses vital nowadays, no? Especially since we have to compete or match up with the major courses. So basically, I think the question here is, how do we make our students appreciate the value of these types of GE courses, considering their heavy workload? So, Ma'am Ruth, would you care to start? Sorry, Ma'am Ruth. Yeah.
Well, nabanggit ni Sir Bowman kanina, no, na challenge talaga to sa mga guro. Actually, not everyone can be really, no, can be a GE teacher, tingin ko. Kasi kasama sa pagiging guro ng isang GE course, no matter what it is, kung required man siya o elective siya, kasama yung concern mo doon sa yung doon sa hindi lang yung academic na matututunan. Kasi 'di ba nga sa atin sa UP kapag GE, no, dapat doon yung other things, hindi yung supplement lang siya doon sa pinag-aaralan sa mga major subjects. So ako, ang style ko is that I say that in the introduction, bakit kayo nandito, no? But we can just do, I mean, yung response kasi depende doon sa kabilang party. Pero kung susubukan natin sa parte natin, nagawin 'yon, I think, no, kung nagawa natin 'yon, okay na tayo. Pero wag natin pong sisihin yung sarili natin kung hindi pinipili ng mga estudyante natin na na mas bigyan ng attention yung kanyang major subjects, no. Pero ang katotohanan, kasama pa rin naman sa G1 niya yung GE sa general weighted average. Anyway, yun po, no, siguro yun lang yung gusto kong i-highlight na kailangan gagawin din natin yung part natin para ipaliwanag sa mga estudyante natin kung ano yung importance ng GE courses. Dagdag ko lang din bago ko i-close itong remarks na to, no, na kailangan pinopromote din natin GE courses, na yung pagtuturo ng GE courses sa mga colleagues din natin. Right. No, na doon ako sa tingin ko, doon talaga yung malaking contribution, because it is in these courses that we try to really contribute in their lifelong learning, no? Madadala nila hanggang sa matagal na panahon. Yun lang po.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir Bowman?
Yung kailangan maayos sa sagot dito dahil nandito yung reyna ng GE. No? So, yung usapin nga ng GE, minsan sinasabi specialization at saka yung generalist na direction, ang sa akin lang ay dulot nga ng ating kasalukuyang kondisyon. Halimbawa, kung sa social media, sa internet, maraming mga disinformation, maraming fake news, maraming historical distortion. Yung mga bagay na yan, hindi sapat yung mga masasabi natin, makakaambag din, pero hindi sapat na yung mga espesyalistang mga major subject ang talagang ganap na makapaghahanda sa mga mag-aaral para harapin ang mga fenomeno na yan. sa ating lipunan. At hindi lang sa lipunan natin, kundi sa ibang mga lipunan din. Ang problema ng paglaganap nga ng fake news, disinformation at saka historical distortion. At yan ay matutugunan sa pamamagitan ng malalim at maepektibo na GE. I think yun yung una nating matitignan na sa mga subject na makakatugon sa ganyang mga hamon ng ating kasalukuyang panahon. Na ang ating kasalukuyang panahon na ang dami nating kinakarap na hindi natin alam kung ano yung paano tayo tutugon sa mga yan. Ang ibinibigay sa atin na kakayahan na critical thinking ng mga halimbawa ng mga GE subject, ng kaalaman tungkol sa ating kasaysayan, kaalaman kung paano maihiwalay ang totoo na balita sa hindi totoong balita o kaya ano yung mga mekanismo ng disinformasyon. Ito ay matutugunan ng ating mga GE subjects. Kung mawala ang mga yan, I think we'll be in deeper trouble. We'll be in deeper trouble pagka mawala yung mga yan. Hindi lang maiaasa yan sa mga specialized subjects natin. So isipin nito, yung GE subjects natin, kailangan din natin iangkop sa kasalukuyang mga challenge natin. Hindi yung parang we just do it as in we were doing it. Of course, they were responding to certain things in the 50s, in the 60s, 70s, they were responding to certain things. But we have to respond to our own thing ngayon. Kaya yung ating GE subjects, kailangan din tumutugon doon, umangkop at binibigyan ng kasangkapan ng mga magagamit ang mga mag-aaral para nga harapin itong mga hindi natin natitiyak na mga hamon na ito. Yung flexibilidad para harapin at maunawaan ang mga ito. So hindi lang ito specialized, kundi sa how you would exist, how you live in this society, which is very important. So yun yung halaga ng isang halaga ng GE na minsan ay nakakalimutan. Kaya kailangan yung mga guro na nandito ngayon, mga 886, yun nga, isipin natin yung kahalagahan ng general education at yung ating responsibilidad bilang mga guro para mapalakas ito, gawin dito ng epektibo at yun nga, may ma-impart naman tayong makabuluhan sa ating mga mag-aaral. Maraming salamat.
Thank you rin po, Sir Bowman and Ma'am Ruth. And on that note, I think it's actually very interesting to end on those particular remarks. At this moment, allow me to provide a very quick summary and synthesis of what we've discussed this morning. So for this morning, I think two themes have been salient in terms of the main takeaways that we can gather from the presentations. We have focused on what we can possibly teach in handling this course and how we can teach them and make it more palatable, if you will, to our students, especially in these challenging times. We focused on both issues or topics that we can use with our students and concepts and theories we can utilize to systematically discuss the course. In the first lecture, Professor Ramon Guillermo provided us a glimpse on his long-standing research on the Global South writ large and how we can actually focus on these particular themes and issues to discuss contemporary world to our classes. In particular, Sir Bowman elaborated on how the Global South as a concept has evolved and how it ultimately reflects significant trends on how we talk about the contemporary world. It is remarkable how from the heavily used concept of the third world in the latter half of the 20th century, and now it has been employed to discuss the phenomena of underdevelopment and perennial dependence of the South to the North. And entering the 21st century, Global South as a concept captured the trend of the times, which is towards developing a more academic treatment of underdevelopment and its consequences. In his lecture centering on these concepts, Professor Guillermo basically presented how powerful concepts are as a teaching tool in itself that we can use to elaborate on how we talk about the contemporary world as a GE course. He showed, for example, that despite the changes we've seen in the employment of these concepts, third world to global south, their emergence and their resilience, it is also important and quite shocking to note that the conversations related to the global south as a whole are still being highly dominated by those in the global north. And Professor Guillermo also presented us with very interesting tools that we can actually use. For instance, references to pop culture, no? Using Google Books Ngram Viewer, no, to actually see the development and trend of certain concepts that we emphasize in the teaching of contemporary world. In the second lecture naman of Dr. Ruth Dosterio Rico, she started her lecture with an elaboration of the 5 competencies expected to be developed from a contemporary world GE course. And again, as I have emphasized in our conversation kanina, it's important to start with these particular expectations. We were also introduced to various theories and concepts on the discipline of international relations. More specifically, Dr. Lusterio Rico emphasized that we can actually borrow and utilize these concepts and theories to explain, no, and zoom in on certain issues about the contemporary world. These tools, after all, are very helpful in systematically organizing our class discussions about the issues and trends. For instance, under development, as discussed by Professor Guillermo, within the contemporary world GE course, we can actually make sense of underdevelopment using the various theories, no, from international relations, from the mainstream theories of realism and liberalism to the middle ground approach of constructivism, and ultimately to the critical approaches by Marxism and feminism. We can use these theories to explain further how globalization, which is a slippery and very big concept by itself, no, broad and confusing, can actually be systematically understood. If we, for instance, appreciate globalization from a realism perspective, no, or from a constructivism perspective, etc. Professor Lusterio Rico also highlighted 3 concepts for us to focus on: global governance, regionalism, and sustainable development. And in relation to these concepts, we can actually make our discussions in class more specific and relatable by focusing on concrete examples like, say, the United Nations, ASEAN, or even the European Union. And then from there, we can unpack meanings of the concepts introduced, no? For instance, for global governance, we can prime our students and ask them, perhaps as an icebreaker, what the United Nations mean for our students, or what were the vivid memories they have from their UN Day celebrations back in primary school. For regionalism, what does ASEAN identity mean for Filipinos like our students? And for SDG, perhaps we can prime our students by asking them what SDG resonates with them the most, and let them provide an explanation for their choices. So definitely there are a lot of things we can do, no, with a contemporary world GE course, no. So I guess we can see the innate broadness of this course as a strength as well, no, to actually deepen conversations with our students. And as our discussions during the open forum has shown, no, while GE course, no, certainly has a bad rep for taking the time of our students from the more technical, highly specialized major courses, I think recent events have shown that it's more important now than ever that we focus on GE courses, right? GE courses are in themselves the foundation of the specialized thinking that our students are quite focused on. The problem on disinformation and malinformation is basically symptomatic of the fact that we need to double down on teaching these GE courses, on teaching critical thinking to our students. No? We have never seen, well, at least I am quite surprised by the situation where we have a front-runner president winning the elections simply by not engaging in debates or on a critical discussion of basically where we're heading as a nation, right? So now more than ever, it's important really to highlight GE courses. No? So I'll end my remarks there. But before we formally close our session for this morning, I've sent a Google Docs link in the chat box. No? So this is where you can actually access yung evaluation form, which is, by the way, very important for everyone to answer if you want to have the certificate issued for you. So we will really appreciate it if you can take the time to evaluate this particular Linangan series, no, or lecture rather. So thank you. And before we end, we have our closing remarks. Professor Nancy Kimwell Gabriel will deliver the closing remarks. Ma'am Nancy, the virtual floor is now yours.
Okay, kailangan muna nating igawad ang certificate natin sa ating
Okay.
mga tagapagsalita at moderator ngayong umaga. SAR, yan. At ilagay natin dito sa gilid ang video ni Sir Guillermo. Yan. Okay, yan. Okay. So, Sir, ito yung ating pagkakataon para mapasalamatan ang ating mga tagapagsalita na talagang nagtrabaho ng gusto para sa araw na ito. Okay. General Education Center, Office of the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, University of the Philippines, Diliman, and Commission on Higher Education award this Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Ramon G. Guillermo for sharing his expertise as resource speaker in the Teach Talk, the Contemporary World Edition under Linangan, the GE Faculty Development Extension Program, held on the 6th day of June 2022 via Zoom, YouTube, and Facebook. Signed by yours truly and Dr. Maria Teresa T. Payungayong, our Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. Thank you, Sir Bomen, at ipicturean ka lang namin katabi ng iyong certificate. Okay, maraming salamat po. Ngayon naman ay ipapagkaloob natin ang sertipiko ni Dr. Ruth Dosterio Rico para po for sharing her expertise as resource speaker in the Teach Talk, the Contemporary World Edition under Linangan, the GE Faculty Development Extension Program via Zoom, YouTube, and Facebook on the 6th day of June. Thank you very much, Ma'am Ruth. At photo op po sa tabi ng inyong sertipiko. Marami pong salamat. At igigawad din natin ang sertipiko ni Assistant Professor Enrico V. Gloria, ang ating tagapagpadaloy ngayong umaga. Okay, as moderator in the Teach Talk, the Contemporary World Edition under Linangan, the GE Faculty Development Extension Program held on the 6th day of June 2022. Signed by yours truly and Dr. Maria Teresa T. Payungayong. Marami pong salamat, Sir Miko.
Thank you rin po. Thank you.
Picturean namin kayo, Sir Miko. Yan. Thank you very much. At dito na po natin tatapusin ang ating programa. Nagpapasalamat po ako sa ating mga tagapagsalita. Unang-una sa napakayaman na talakayan tungkol sa contemporary world, mga pangyayari sa ating daigdig, sa ating planeta. At kay Miko, Sir Miko, para sa ating tagapagpadaloy ngayong umaga. Siyempre, maraming salamat sa pinakamarami. Nakapagtala ako ng parang 970. Marami tayong dumalo ngayon. 900, ilan ba? Parang 977 kanina yung huling pagtatala ko ng dumalo. So napakinggan po kayo ng napakaraming faculty. Hindi siguro puro GE faculty ito, pero meron pang mga faculty na hindi lang GE ang itinuturo. Totoong napakaraming problema ng ating daigdig ngayon. At yun ang gusto natin talagang maihatid din sa pamamagitan ng Linangan na ang General Education Program ay naglalayon palagi na makatulong sa paglilinang ng mga critical na isip, no? Hindi lang critical na isip, no, kundi creative na pag-iisip at action din. At sa pamamagitan ng episode natin ngayon ay natitiyak kong makakadagdag tayo ng mga kaalaman kung paano nila i-handle ang contemporary world subject. No, para sa akin ay importante na maipaalam at matalakay sa mga estudyante ang mga nangyayari. So yung mga issues and problems, realities ng na nagaganap sa buong mundo ngayon at maka-provide tayo ng tools of analysis kung paano ito susuriin ng mga estudyante sa critical na pamamaraan para sila mismo ay kaya nilang unawain at kaya nilang bumuo ng tindig, no, sa mga issue na nakakaharap natin, nasasalubong natin ngayon. Lalong-lalo na yung usapin ng mga kaguluhan, kagutuman, pag-aaway-away o gyera, no, kalagayan ng mga Pilipinong nakakalat sa buong daigdig, no, at importanteng kasangkapan ang pagbalik din sa kasaysayan. No, habang pinapakinggan ko kayo kanina kasi yung globalization, malakas na malakas ang diskurso diyan nung dekada 80. Pero ang diskurso noon ay ganito, hinahalinhan lang niya ang salitang kolonyalismo, imperialismo, neokolonyalismo at nagko-coincide na yan sa diskurso ng neoliberalismo. So importante palagi ring para sa akin na tingnan kung sino ang initiator ng mga policy na yan o process na yan o ideology na yan o predicament na yan. No, at kasi pag alam natin yung initiator, ma-discern din natin kung ano yung mga interest at motibong pinaglilingkuran yan. Magkakaroon tayo ng kakayanang basahin yung mga actions ng mga initiators na yan. Kasabay na termino na naririnig ko rin nung dekada 80 hanggang dekada 90, yung people-to-people relations. Yung pagde-develop ng mga people-to-people relations, kung hindi mo maaasahan yung gobyerno mo, at saka naririnig ko rin yung mga term na north-south, north-north, south-south relation ng dekada 80 at 90, no? Kasabay ng people-to-people relations. Kaya naisip ko habang pinapakinggan ko kayo kanina ay siguro dapat din meron parang solidarity for for the Global South or solidarity of Global South for peace, progress, and social justice, no, mga alternatibong pagkakaisa at advocacy, no, at collective action para talagang maisentro ang kapakanan ng mamamayan, hindi kapakanan ng iilang interes lamang ng mga mayayamang uri at bansa. So, diyan ko na lamang tatapusin ang aking closing remarks. Ang susunod po nating linangan episode ay sa July 8. Ang paksa naman natin ay Science, Technology, and Society, STS. Marami rin pong salamat sa staff ng GEC na nagsisilbing ding secretariat ng Linangan Faculty Development Project na ito. Thank you very much. At inaaniyahan ko po kayong mga tagapagsalita at staff na magkaroon tayo ng photo session. Ano natin? Ako lang ba yung ayan? Sorry. Sige, 1, 2, 3. Salamat po. Si Kenrick, ayan. Ngayon lang pumasok. O ulit. Si Jerome. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. At kita-kita
Thank you
po
po.
ulit tayo next month.
Thank you.